Coming up this week on the Markcast, the XFL is hemorrhaging, leaking information. They're trying to put the genie back in the bottle, but I think some of this stuff is spilling out. Happy to talk about it on the podcast. We're talking the Vegas XFL, new team expansion, however you want to look at that. XFL in Seattle, and lots more. And then this is the long-awaited, long-promised Amar Doman on the Markcast. We are talking 30 minutes with America's CFL team, the BC Lions owner. Don't miss it.
You got to put some wins on the board as well. We've had some tough years, so certainly that's been part of the problem out here. But we're really excited about going forward. The team we have, the coaching staff, and there's a lot of continuity to it. And I think that's going to deliver some dividends for the team. And I'm busy cheerleading the heck out of this team in the background and investing in it.
Then we're also joined by a longtime friend of the show, Kevin Kugler, talking all about the Fox broadcast aspect side of the USFL. Kevin's going to be in the booth again this weekend for the USFL. Lots of insights there.
Anytime you can be on the bottom floor, the ground floor of something that's starting out, like the USFL is with Fox this year, you're always kind of jazzed by that. And again, I love football. I love it in the fall. I love it in the spring. I think it's a great opportunity.
And then we're breaking down all the CFL rule changes, talking USFL TV ratings, if we want to walk down that path that's a little tenuous right now. Lots of other stuff with Evan. Really excited to have him.
June Jones put in his Twitter bio that he was going to be the offensive coordinator in the XFL under Jim Haslett for a team in Seattle. So obviously there's a lot to unpack there. And he had that up for maybe half an hour and then took it down once word started to get around that, maybe he wasn't supposed to put that out there yet.
And then even with all our BC Lions talk, don't think I forgot to give Edmonton Elks a little bit of love. We have Jake Ceresna from their team joining us on the show.
I think this offseason for me has been more just about healing my body and more just getting everything fine-tuned and getting ready to go for this year.
Huge show this week. Whoever thought we would get to this point, really appreciate everyone for putting up with this. Thanks again. Well, hello and welcome to the Markcast. Thank you all so much for stopping by. Reed here, and this is it. This is the big Amar Doman episode on the Markcast. Who would have thought a year and a half ago this little XFL podcast would have 30 minutes of undivided attention with the owner of one of the CFL's premier franchises? I could not be more excited. Thank you all so much, all the support, and everybody for stopping by and putting up with all this nonsense along the way. Huge show today. Besides the big Mr. Doman interview, we're talking all the XFL stuff, the XFL potentially setting up the franchise in Vegas. We had reported on that a couple weeks ago. Now we have The Rock in Vegas tweeting and posting about working with the city in the near future. We're going to break down what that means. Also, June Jones has gotten in trouble before, and this week was no different. June kind of spoiling the XFL's return to Seattle, as well as June's position with the team on Twitter. We're going to be breaking all that down, plus recapping week 2 of the USFL and then previewing week 3. Also, CFL rule changes. So we're all across the board today. Lots of content from all 3 of your favorite alt football leagues. Great guest list. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy the work that I'm doing. Lots of work going into this. Like and subscribe. Get us over that 2,000 subscriber mark. We are giving away, we have a custom jersey we're going to be raffling off. Lots of CFL Grey Cup merch, AAF Commanders jersey. Lots of stuff going into that giveaway. So please like and subscribe. Your guest list today, and then I'm going to get out of here so you can enjoy all the content. Amar Doman, owner of America's CFL team, the BC Lions. We're going to start with him. We have a team owner. You have to go with him first. So Amar will be leading the guest list today. 30 minutes with him, rapid fire, tons of stuff, anything you would want from a CFL owner's perspective about, growing the game, working with the BC Lions, developing a new fan base there. We also talk with Amar about the Genius Sports deal. Talk a little hockey, Kraken, Vancouver Canucks, a lot more. I think it's good. Amar's done like shorter interviews, right? Like I've seen him on Rod's show, of course, but I thought the 30 minutes was a good spot to get him on, get a little more humanizing, get a little bit more anecdotal kind of notes. Anecdotes, is that the right way to use that? Lots of good content from Amar. So I really appreciate Matt Baker, Carolyn, everyone over at the BC Lions for setting that up. Then longtime friend of the show, Kevin Kugler. Kevin, was involved with the Spring League and the Mega Bowl and all that last year. Kevin is now in the booth for parts of the USFL games. He's in the rotation with Joe Klatt and everybody else. Get a lot of network insights from Kevin about how Fox is feeling about the league. Messages he's getting from on high, the excitement involved with Fox and NBC and everybody over there. Also kind of how Kevin preps for the games and all that stuff. Lots of insights, the guys that do, like Brock and Kevin, the guys that are on the sidelines in the booth for these alt football leagues, more work than anything goes into that for them as well to prep for that. We also talk a lot of the technological stuff that the USFL is doing and how Kevin in the booth is kind of interacting with that. Lots of insights. Then we have Evan Willsmore coming on. Evan's joined us for lots of USFL live streams in the past. We're talking all the USFL Week 2 notes coming out, TV ratings, attendance, all that kind of stuff. A little bit of drama coming out with the Fox brass about the TV ratings. I will just say, ratings, if they're tremendously good ratings, I wouldn't expect to see, 18 different people, including Brian Woods' brother, tweeting about how good the ratings are. Take it what you will. I don't think the ratings are horrendous, but there's certainly been a lot of drama involved with that in the online communities this week. So I'm going to get into all that with Evan. Also talking the CFL rule changes. We're adjusting the hash marks, moving back the kickoff, things like that. And then, of course, all your XFL stuff, like I mentioned, setting up franchises, all that kind of stuff, all the leaking news. I was proud of my thumbnail this week. The XFL is now leaking information, this tight-lipped ship. For so long now, the bows are breaking and things are coming out, spilling off, and we're trying to kind of gather up that stuff to keep you guys informed. Then we have Jake Ceresna coming on. Jake is with the Edmonton Elks. Always excited to get a player interview, so I really appreciate Jake's time. So we have Amar Doman coming on. We have Kevin Kugler, Evan Willsmore, and then Jake Ceresna. I will stop by at the end of the show. NFL draft day today, so I'm hoping we don't have any crazy earth-shattering news. But if it is, future read as always will pop in, but otherwise I'll see you at the end of the show. Thanks. Well, I am thrilled today. I know our listeners are thrilled as well. We're joined by a very own CFL team owner, Mr. Amar Doman of the BC Lions. How are you?
I'm doing great. Great to be here, Reed.
This is very exciting. We don't get team owners on the Markcast here. So how are you doing? First off, how is your day so far?
Hey, everything's great, and certainly the days are always busy, but adding the Lions into the mix has been fantastic. So we're having a lot of fun with it already.
That's my question. You came in kind of a tumultuous, just in the middle of the season. You come in now that we've gone through the 2021 season. We're into 2022. How are things settling out for the Lions?
Yeah, things are shaking out really well. We're getting a lot of buzz locally here. We're really trying to re-engage the fan base. And of course, we've had some tough seasons. So, you can do a lot of things, with the fan base and cheerleading and that kind of stuff. But you got to put some wins on the board as well. And we've had some tough years. So certainly that's been part of the problem out here. But we're really excited about going forward. The team we have, the coaching staff, and there's a lot of continuity to it. And I think that's going to deliver some dividends for the team. And I'm busy cheerleading the heck out of this team in the background and investing in it.
Yeah, that's the thing is, you can have as many ideas as you want, as many sales and marketing ideas and stuff, but the wins, you have to have somewhat of a conceivable football team, winning games, right?
Exactly right. So, Vancouver's famous for having fickle fans as well. And I'm one of them with the Canucks. And, if they're not playing well, I tell you, the building gets empty pretty quick. But certainly here we've got an exciting, very exciting team. And under our ownership now, we're doing some really good things with the community and youth football. COVID restrictions are gone. So, hey, look, I think this season's going to be pretty exciting coming up here.
Your Canucks put quite a thrashing into my Kraken last night. I was watching the game. That was not an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, all for none. But, hey, we'll take the win even with a backup goaltender like we had last night, and finish the season even on a high note, even though we're eliminated.
You own a football team. You're a sports guy. I mean, is this deep in your bones, something that you enjoy? What is it about sports that you love so much?
Yeah, I've always loved it since I was a kid, playing a lot of different sports, but certainly my kids are involved now in sports and football. And the opportunity with the Lions came up a number of years ago with Mr. Braley, and we were off and on negotiating for the club. And certainly for someone like myself to give back to the community, number one, put the Lions back into solid hands here with local ownership. They were in solid hands with sort of, distance ownership with Mr. Braley, who was great, but local in the CFL matters. So when I had this opportunity over the years to talk to him about buying the club, I think he saw my sincerity, and sadly he passed and got the deal done after that with his estate, but they couldn't have been more first class with me. And I think they saw, exactly what I told David, which was the truth. We're going to invest in this and really revitalize the Lions for the long term and make it the hot ticket in town again. And it's going to take some time, but we're here for the job and we're not going anywhere. And we've got deep pockets to invest in the team, and we're doing that.
Because that's the thing is, I think people expect immediate results of any kind. I mean, especially this day and age in Twitter. I mean, this is not a 6-month or a 1-year plan.
No, it's not. And Reed, look, it's going to take a number of years, and, one fan at a time. And we get that youth football. We get, kids playing at halftime again in the Dome. And, we're going to have a lot of fun with it. And in the summertime, we're going to have entertainment. I'm throwing a massive party here on June 11th for the opener. So I hope everyone's going to attend that. I think we're going to have great attendance. We're going to announce a bunch of stuff next week. And as far as the entertainment goes, I think it's going to be pretty exciting. And it's going to be a fun event to really kind of kick off the relaunch of the Lions.
Yeah, I was talking with Matt Baker about that. He said even it's been tight-lipped around the board of what these announced things are going to be, the entertainment, I guess you call it.
Exactly. We're going to kick off the season in style here, and I think it's something that hasn't been done, in the CFL for a long time, as far as really opening things off with a bang. And we're going to do that against the Elks and have a really good evening that night.
I am curious about that, actually. So, you come in, you're announced as a team owner, it's huge fanfare, everything. That first home game against the Elks, having that loss, because the whole time I'm sitting there, and we had done podcasts that week, and I've been talking with Canadian reporters talking about you coming in and all this, and then having that party there what was that like?
Well, it was welcome to the business, right? And certainly, you get up from that one, and it hurt. Certainly the wins, the few we've had and a few losses there in that streak, I learned pretty quickly how different it does feel as a fan and as an owner. It's just the emotion is a million times more is what it is, really. The passion isn't any different, but you do feel like you wear the losses. But when the wins come, man, it's exhilarating. Like it's the biggest high you've ever felt in your life. So it's really cool stuff. And it just, I think, reconfirmed my passion for the BC Lions in that. But yeah, it was disappointing. I was on TSN that night and everything. It was a bit of a blur. I was pulled in a lot of different directions. I addressed BC Place, as you recall, and, we're pretty pumped up. And then we take an L. But, hey, we're working through our roster, and I really think our guys have got everything in good shape, ready for 2022. But it wasn't the best way to start things, but we got a lot of years ahead of us, a lot of games.
Well, that's the thing. It seems like, at least in the offseason here, unique approach, with Nathan Rourke, right? We have kind of, we have a bargain, right, chip right now with our quarterback. We're developing a lot around him, spending a lot of money around him. I mean, do you say anything in that? I mean, do you let Rick and the guys figure that out? It just felt like there was direction from on high, like we want to make big changes here in the offseason to really propel forward.
I leave the management team alone to run the X's and O's, frankly. They're professionals. And I've always said, look, I wouldn't want the BC Lions coming in to run our building materials companies and other entities, and I wouldn't come in to run theirs. I just have to make sure we have the right team in place as far as the management team is, and they'll go take care of things. But I think they can see, my excitement, my caring about the team. And I think some of that will resonate, spill over into the management team and keep them fired up, because I'm fired up. And we really want to give BC, a new look look and really have the fans really, they've got a lot of options. They've always had options, but certainly we'll say, I want to go to a Lions game again. And I've really had good success with my business colleagues here in town. I've leaned on every single one of them. Every single one of them has come through, whether it's to buy tickets, whether it's to buy suites, whether it's to support all of the great things the Lions do in the community. Everyone's showing up. And that means a lot to me. And that really does, I think, help re-engage the team as well as management and as well as the community. So we're coming at it at all angles. And again, no quick fixes to get the place packed again. And even lower bowl, we can get that filled, a few times a year. We've got to win some games. I think that's easily doable in the city. It's not the building. The building's great. Pavco, we're having great meetings with them, and they've become very accommodating to us to help us. What else can we do for the Lions? So there's a lot of good stuff going on in the background, Reed.
Yeah, it's hard because, like you said, people do have options. I mean, here we had Netflix, right, for the first time, in 10 years or whatever, post the loss. I mean, there's so much other content, and the CFL is competing against, not just the NFL or the XFL, whatever we want, but I mean, streaming and Hulu and everything else. I mean, how does that weigh on your mind when you're trying to figure out the game plan moving forward?
Yeah, I think what we have to do is just really worry about ourselves, because look at the Canucks seems to, get filled even on most nights, and they're at a tough season. They're still getting 16 to 18,000 in there. They've got those same options as Netflix and everything else. So our job here is just, look, get the Lions more front and center. We've built the dance team up to 40 from 6. We're going to have a lot of advertising. Our whole new campaign comes out. We're going to give a sneak peek on May 2nd, and then the full rolls May 5th. We're doing an event at BC Place, and we're really going to kick things off and re-engage it. It's up to us, Reed. And it's not up to, other eyeballs looking at things. We've got the genius thing happening with the CFL, which is great. The wagering, the CFL is coming a long way quickly as far as getting engaged on the technology side, which we've been behind on, and that's come quickly. So I think you're going to see a lot of things galvanize here, and it's really, again, up to us to put the product on the field, win games. And I think you talk about the Canadian quarterback situation. Look, that's a great conversation piece. First time in 55 years, we've had 2 Canadian quarterbacks. One's from my hometown, Victoria, being Nathan. It's a great story. And I think having that continuity and for the fans to look at someone they can relate to is something that's slowly been lost in the CFL here and there, because these 1 and 2 year contracts, everyone's just moving around, right? And for the fans, it's hard to engage and go, who's the team? And one of our jobs, I think, is to try and keep our team together. And the teams, that have been winning, like the Blue Bombers, et cetera, and the Ticats, their teams stick together, and we need to re-sign guys. And we've got an incredible offense. Our defense is going to be good. We just need to keep these guys together such that they become a team, and the fans can identify and know who to cheer for. And I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's so hard. I mean, it's like success begets success. Like Winnipeg doesn't have any problem with any of this stuff right now, right? But it's getting to that position, right?
It is, and it takes a lot of work and time, but if the fans will give us a shot here and come back in, we're going to try and make things affordable. We've got those family packs out there that are ridiculously cost effective for families to come in, a whole different zone for them as well. So there's a lot of things we're going to be bringing to the table that are new and cost effective. I'll subsidize them personally if I have to, but we're really going to have a team feeling again for BC, and the fans have something to pull for here.
You talk about the genius sports, and Ambrosie came out, the big announcements leading into the Grey Cup. Where do you see that? I mean, you obviously smart, successful person. Where do you see the benefits that Genius is going to have for the league?
Well, number one, Genius is a proven entity, with all the other leagues in the world. They know what they're doing. We've had some meetings with these guys. They're top shelf. They're going to really help us on the technology side, where guys are going to be able to do analytics. They're going to be able to, bet on those analytics. And it's a whole different view. This won't happen overnight, but we've got the best in the world with us. And I've got to credit Randy for that. He's done a great job in putting that deal together. So that is going to, evolve over time. It's early days. We just put it together a few months ago, but it's done. And we are now at the leading edge advantage of all technology and gambling. With any other league, we're right at parity with anybody else. So time will see how this evolves as we get more eyeballs back into the CFL, which is exciting. And we're looking at a 10th team for next year as well. So the Schooners, you never know, could come back, and we're hearing good things about that. That's another good piece of press for the CFL. And I just think the eyeballs are coming back, and it's going to take guys like me to really drum it up.
Yeah, that's interesting. The Atlantic Schooners, and we have a voicemail here as well, about the game that's taking place over there. Realistically with that, is that something that you actually see happening in the next few years? I know you don't speak for all that, but is that something that you see happening?
Yeah, just being around the CFL now and being on the board of governors, we're hearing some things about that. So, they've got the games sold out now for July, which, the tickets were gone in seconds, 10,000 gone. It's pretty cool to see that passion for that football. And that was close to use the term, on the 1 yard line pre-COVID for that expansion to happen. And then COVID, of course, changed a whole bunch of things. So I think that train gets back on the track. I'm enthused about that. And again, it gives us a true, if it happens, a national league, right, coast to coast. And frankly, something new for the CFL. I think that's pretty exciting as well. So I'm hoping, like every other fan, that happens.
Oh, having the 10 teams and having equal all these, a lot of the world is made a lot easier for the CFL, I believe, with 10 teams across the country.
Absolutely. Just the even number, everything else. And then, perhaps there's a, BC Lions versus, the Atlantic, some kind of a marquee game, because we'd like to have one of those too. And maybe that could be created. There's a lot of neat stuff that could come out of that. And I think the fan base out there is starved for something like this. So I think this lines up, and I think the guys that are working on it are top shelf as well.
Yeah, it's hard because BC does exist kind of on an island sometimes on the West. You look at a lot of those division rivalries, like the Banjo Bowl and all that. BC kind of gets left out a little bit.
It does. And, I was joking with Randy saying, hey, I could start lipping off a few cities to start one, but I'm not going to do that. We're going to stay classy out here in BC and let the players find their own battles and things like that. So we're enjoying this. And again, want to keep BC classy and also really make the team about BC, not just Vancouver. So we're going to be going out. We're visiting 130 schools this year. Now that COVID restrictions are off, the boys are doing a great job as far as community. We're going to have, rallies downtown, but we want to take the team out and the dancers out to different regions, whether it's up north to Prince George, Kitimat Terrace, all over the place, spread the orange, hand out swag, get to youth football. I'm doing that myself. I'm doing the coin toss this weekend at flag football on the North Shore. And, the turnouts have been amazing when we bring the Lions around. It is really affecting kids, and that's my dream. And I figure, hey, look, if we can affect one child getting into football, picking the right path, or just turning them on to football, let's start generating and breeding a bunch of fans like they do in the U.S. We can do it here and make it more visible than it was, and that's my job.
That's the thing. The best thing about the CFL is that approachability with the players, and then whether it's online or social media, getting out, and people like that. People like feeling like they matter, right? When it comes to that, you watch the NFL, you're like, they're not paying attention to any of these guys that are tweeting at them or girls that are watching. That I think is one of the strongest points of the CFL.
Well, it is, and I think we can do even more with that, and we've got some things coming out that I know the fans in BC are going to like with our profiles, video clips, trying to get, as I talked about earlier, getting that fan to connect with the players, and that's what you're touching on, and it's a bit lost, if not lost, in certain regions. We really want to focus on that fan re-engagement with the team, and like the days of Lule and G-Roy, and where are those household names? Well, listen, we've got some of them on this team. There's some personalities. All of them are great, but there's some outliers there that we need to leverage and really get re-engaged with the fans, and it's pretty exciting stuff because I'm pumped about it.
You talked earlier about sports betting and partnering that with the Genius Sports deal. It's off to a slow start, right? Lots of things to tackle that way, and it's really up to the teams each, right? It's not a league-wide solution that way. Where do you guys in BC see single-game sports betting and all of that kind of growing with you guys?
I think it's going to build as we, re-engage the fan base, and it allows people to do something with their phones and really, connect during the game and re-engage and make it more exciting because, frankly, before the Genius deal, we didn't have anything, and most other leagues, if not all, do. So now we're right up to speed, so we can compete with that. So someone's in on a Friday night for a game, you can bet on the half, the quarter, you can do all those things that you can do on everything else. And in fact, the NFL, of course, being a world-class league, probably the best in the world, is such a leader in that. And now we've just tucked in right behind it with the exact same strategy. So let's give it some time, Reed. But we're there, which is great.
You come in, a lot of ideas, right? Successful outside of football. You come in, you're one of 9, but you're still kind of part of that, the fabric of the CFL. Has it been harder to maybe implement things, bring ideas in? We have a mix of ownerships and, like we got the MLSE of the world and everything. But when you come in with ideas, how is that met league-wide?
Well, it's been met very well. I've been very well received from all of the other teams and the commissioner and, of course, our management team here. And I'm just saying, hey, guys, I'm here to support. What can we do here to help this club and help British Columbia? And donating to UBC, SFU, trying to get the Shrum Bowl going again. And all these things we want to revitalize, not to bring back the old, but there's so many good pieces of that have just fallen off the table, and no pointing fingers. It just is what it is. But there's certain things that we want to bring back that will also bring back that sort of, call it 10 to 30-year-old, right? That's been lost a bit here. And everyone knows the NFL. They know the Seahawks. And selfishly, I'm glad the Seahawks have got the wheels coming off a bit because they might get some more eyeballs on Canadian football during the summer and into the fall. So I do like that. And I'm not a Seahawks fan anyway. But certainly, if we can get to that demographic and give them something that's affordable, exciting, and with good technology, I think we're going to have, this work. And again, my thing as far as wanting results, being in business, you need results quickly or you get rolled over pretty fast. Sports is no different when you're on the field. I've got to be patient back here, knowing that what I'm investing in is going to be for the next 20, 25 years. And we're not going anywhere. And we're going to revitalize this piece by piece and really put together, we hope, an exciting product for the fan to come in and watch.
It's been said that, the whole, COVID year off and the XFL talks, kind of everything that's happened the last 2 years kind of was a wake up call maybe to some of the CFL higher up, like, hey, we really kind of got to maybe, it's like you got your house and stuff's got to be painted. You kind of push it off or whatever. And now it's like, hey, we've maybe taken the foot off the gas a little bit. Like you said, we need to re-engage and really make sure we're touching those demographics. Is that kind of how you feel?
Yeah, that the COVID and all that didn't help. And of course, the missed season hurt like heck. And, it hurt for the players. It hurt for everybody. And it just sort of disjointed everything. Then we had the truncated season. We couldn't do a full Grey Cup party in Hamilton. Still was a great Grey Cup. I was at it. It was fantastic. Looking forward to Regina this year. Back to Hamilton. And, maybe that's a good segue into the Grey Cup. We're going to be bidding extremely hard for 2025 to get that back into BC Place. And just know that, myself and our management team will be doing everything to bring the Grey Cup here for 2025. And I know we're going to have competition with everybody, but I'm going to give it my all.
Yeah, we did a live show. My wife and I came up. We did a live show in Hamilton at the bar for the Grey Cup there. Well, we have our flights booked, or I guess not our flights, but we have our Airbnb booked. And I'm in with all the football reporters of Canada. I'm the one American in the group that they let in. So we'll be there, but it would definitely be an easier commute to go up to BC than it would be to go to Hamilton from Seattle.
Yeah, for sure. That'll just be a nice I-5 drive and you're good.
Yeah. I curious things maybe that you've wanted to accomplish so far that maybe you're taking a little bit longer. Anything, I mean, obviously, the long 5-year plan, 10-year plan, but anything in the short that you've wanted to tackle so far?
Well, I think the team has been doing a great job as far as everything in the off season. I mentioned in a recent interview that, I didn't realize how hard the team works in the off season. Kind of, okay, off season, it gets pretty quiet, but the planning, the scheduling, I mean, I'm blown away at my first view at all this and how hard these guys work. And of course, I'm throwing a lot at them as far as what I want to do with the opening day and entertainment and halftime and all these things. So there's a lot of work going on, and I've got to credit them for that. And, as far as what I've I would say, I don't think I've missed anything so far. I just can't wait for the season to get started and, get at it again. We finished the season very nicely with a nice pounding of the Elks, which is good for the team and the morale. I know it was the end of the season, a game that didn't really matter, but still a win's a win, and athletes are athletes. And that left us with a nice finish. So would I have liked to made the playoffs? That's one thing I think I would have said, but anything else off season is in motion. Our team is great, and they're managing my pushing pretty well.
I have a couple of voicemails here. One more question before we get to that. Just as a football fan, that you said the pounding the Elks, the last game, we saw a lot of Nathan Work. Right now, he's heading up the team here. Just as a football fan, as someone that's involved with the team, what do you think of Nathan Work?
I think he's fantastic. Number one, in Ohio, he was fantastic. He's got awards. He's also just a very hard-working guy. And I'll tell you, being under Mike's arm last year like that and bookending the season a little bit, that's great. I know he doesn't have a ton of CFL experience, but he's got the grit, the work ethic, and he's putting the time in every day, whether it's pouring, rain, it doesn't matter. He's a football player, and I see that commitment, how hard he's working there. And again, having that experience with Mike, that's you just can't get that. And I think this lines up very nicely. He's a dual threat. He can take off on you. That's shown. He's strong, and he's an accurate thrower, and he's a great guy to be around. He came out, he's coming out a lot to all sorts of different, events with youth, and he's the real deal. He wants to be there. He's excited to be there. You got to drag this kid off the field. He doesn't want to go anywhere. He just wants to be playing. And I'm sure he just cannot wait to get started. And I'll be visiting all the guys in training camp in May up in Kamloops. So I look forward to seeing all the guys together again up there too.
Awesome. We have a couple of voicemails here, and then I have one more jokey thing before we get out of here. This is a voicemail. I did a call from our listeners. This is from Van. Van's a longtime listener asking about merchandising with the CFL.
My question is for Mr. Doman. Why don't you have a merchandise fulfillment center in the U.S.? I can't believe that that's something that the CFL teams across the board are not doing. It's very difficult to get merch here in the United States. Thank you for your time, and look forward to hearing your response.
Okay, thanks for that question. Yeah, I don't have a great answer for that. I just don't know how the volumes would be sort of being dwarfed out by the NFL down there in the U.S., which I know the U.S. well. A lot of our businesses are in the States. What I can tell you, though, is the online experience is pretty much where this heads. And a lot of my team and employees down in the U.S. order online. And I think if you go to bclions.com and find the merch, you're going to find a lot of good merch, New Era, and a whole bunch of stuff there. I'm investing in inventory. We're going to be tripling our inventory on everything here. And we're also going to, in Vancouver, this doesn't help the caller, but in Vancouver, we're going to be setting up some kiosks and some in-season sales and sort of billboards and displays, if you will, as well. So we want to get the orange and black back out there locally here. But I think if you're in the U.S., I think online is going to be the strategy, which would probably suit you best. And point, click, and it'll be delivered to you right away.
Yeah, shipping's expensive, though. I think that's where Van's bemoaning is sometimes it costs about $20 to get a $20 hat. Sometimes I think that is the sticking point for a lot of Americans. We have a lot, our listenership is probably 60-40 American, and it's that shipping, getting it across, where if you had local fulfillment, maybe you wouldn't have as much of that price point. Well,
listen, I'll definitely make some notes on this and see what we can do in the Pacific Northwest, and maybe get some orange and black down there, and that'd be fun to do that.
One more from Mark here, not of the Markcast. Mark Perry is the one that runs CFL Newshub. Mark's got a question for you.
Hey, Amar, this is Mark. Appreciate you being on the Markcast. Question for you is, with success like the Touchdown Atlantic selling out within an hour, where do you see the CFL in the next 5 years? Do you think there'll be more of these games scattered throughout Canada? And where do you kind of see things? What's kind of the 5-year plan for not only your team, but the CFL?
Yeah, I think the CFL, Randy's best to answer, some of those strategies as far as, taking the the show on the road, if you will. And there was some chatter about doing some international as well, just to get more viewership, not for expansion, I think, but really to get more eyeballs on the team. But as far as BC goes, I'm hoping in 5 years that certainly we've got a whole bunch of kids wearing orange and black here locally and really re-engaging with the Lions, coming out with their families to, enjoy a good Friday or Saturday night like they used to here, and getting that re-engaged. I think in 5 years, if we've got a much stronger season ticket base, a much stronger fan base, and hopefully a lot more wins is going to solve a lot of things as well. And I think we're heading in the right direction there. There's no question with the roster we have, but a successful team, I think much, more filled stands, if you will, and certainly some of these things where we can take the team on the road and promote. I'll leave that to Randy and the CFL to work through those matters, and they've got that handled. I think you're going to see a lot more excitement with those things and ideas where we can get sort of out of the box, if you will, and re-engage some people in different cities, and even do preseason somewhere else or move training camps around. Things like that to just get more visible is required. So I'm definitely going to throw a lot of ideas on the table as I get my feet wet more being a governor now, and try and get that word out more, if you will, on the road. So very good questions. I don't have all the answers for you, but year by year, we're going to improve every year, just like we do in business.
Last question for you, and I've been waiting the whole time for this. So I famously have called, the Saskatchewan Roughriders are Canada's CFL team, arguably, whatever. Dallas Cowboys, right, are America's NFL team. I have called the BC Lions America's CFL team. Where do you stand on that branding? I know Matt Baker is a fan of it. Do you at least support me in my quest to try to convert the BC Lions to America's CFL team?
1,000,000% Reed. And I'll tell you what, it's crazy how, I shouldn't say it's crazy, but when, in my business community down in the US, we've got a lot of stuff going on. Everybody knows the BC Lions. You just mention the name, or they mention it, and you go back to sort of the Pamela Anderson days, and there's this sort of profile with the Lions that's hard to explain. Like, I don't want to say it's like the Dallas Cowboys, but it's a known entity. I think if you mention maybe the Alouettes or something, guys are, who's that? In certain places, you mentioned BC Lions. Oh yeah, we know who that is. And there's just whether Doug Flutie was here for a bit, and there's some profile here that is resonated in the US, and I love that, and I certainly want to keep that going. I know sometimes it's hard to find the game on ESPN5 or ESPN Plus. I was down in the States watching the road game in LA, and I finally found it in a sports bar on Saturday, so it's college crazy, and I'm in the corner with my buddies trying to watch the Lions play the Alouettes back in October. We had the game on, and all of a sudden we had a whole bunch of people with us watching the Lions play the Alouettes, and they like the 3-down football. It's fast, it's fun, it's different a bit, but it's engaging. So I'm happy to hear that, and I want to continue to beat the drum, and we'll make sure the Lions are Canada's, America's team.
Mr. Doman, I could not thank you enough for your time today. I really appreciate it, and we'll be up there. I have to work. I can't make it to the home opener, but we'll make the trek up from Seattle. We'll be up there this season. I really appreciate it.
We love that. We'll have some swag for you. I like what you're wearing. It looks great. And we'll see you. Hopefully come up for that opener June 11th. It's going to be big.
Yeah, this is a custom Markcast. One of our listeners sent this to me. So this is a custom jersey. Thank you so much again. I appreciate it.
Likewise. Thanks for having me. Talk to you soon.
Very excited today to be joined by a longtime friend of the show now, Kevin Kugler. Last time we had you on, we were previewing the Mega Bowl for the Spring League. Now we're talking USFL. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'd kind of forgotten about the Mega Bowl for a while there. That was a fun year. I think you and I are on the same page that I like football. You like football. Basically, anytime we can get it, and that was fun last year. But this has been fun too.
I had made jokes a little bit about, Spring League going into USFL and all that. I did get legitimate questions like, does the Mega Bowl lineage, does that translate to the USFL? So I don't think so. I wish we lived in that world.
Yeah, I don't believe any of that has come along to the USFL in this new incarnation of football for the spring. But, I'd love to have another crack at the Mega Bowl. That was a lot of fun.
Well, I'm excited. Obviously Fox and USFL and coming out with all this, and I'd reached out to you because I thought Kevin, right, we didn't know the announcers or anybody. I thought Kevin would be someone. I mean, you're with Fox, you're with, you're familiar with all that. What was it like finding out, being involved in all this, the premier kind of prestige Fox product right now here, they've got all this money involved in?
I was fired up. I mean, look, I was interested in being part of it from the very beginning. So it was something that I was kind of hoping would come my direction, and it certainly did. Anytime you can be on the bottom floor, the ground floor of something that's starting out, like the USFL is with Fox this year, you're always kind of jazzed by that. And again, I love football. I love it in the fall. I love it in the spring. I think it's a great opportunity to tell some stories. And the way Fox is fully invested in the USFL, from the dozens of cameras and everybody being mic'd up, and Mike Pereira being involved as the head of officiating for the USFL, and Daryl Johnson, our colleague on Fox NFL coverage, and so involved with the league on the league side for the USFL. There's just so much synergy, which is such a stupid buzzword, but it really does pay. It really does matter here, because there is just great synergy between the league and the networks and everything that they're doing to try to present football in a new and exciting way.
Well, it's getting to that now, because there'd been a lot of hesitations kind of leading into the season about whatever. I do feel like, when you have like Skip Shepard, talking about it, they're debating it. We have, I'm not as high on the Colin Cowherd segments. I think he's a little bit more like, hey, here, read this paper. But I think you're getting good Fox people talking about it. It does feel like it doesn't exist in a bubble. It makes it feel like it exists on the network with everything else.
Well, and I think one of the big keys for that is that we've invested our own people in it. I mean, I'm doing these games. I do games for Fox in the NFL season. My partner on the NFL season, Mark Sanchez, is with me in the booth this weekend for our game. Brock Heward, you see him all over college football for Fox. And, of course, Joel Klatt's the number one analyst for college football. And Kurt Menefee is on 8 hours a day on Sundays. So you've really got a lot of marriage between prominent people that you see with the NFL, and Fox is really committed to that by bringing us over to the USFL. And I think to be taken seriously, you have to do that. You have to bring in people that people are recognizing throughout the Fox network doing other things, whether it be college or NFL. And I think Fox has done a really good job in making sure that legitimacy from the NFL and the college football coverage carries over to the USFL.
And so now you've been involved in it now, a couple of weeks, brought in, have been a part of meetings, right? You had said you had meetings today. We were scheduling this. So, I mean, what is the vibe you're getting with everybody? I mean, obviously they're putting out, we are very proud of this. We have a lot. Is that you're getting those in those like internal meetings, right? We want this. We're 100% all on board.
Well, here's the thing I can tell you about the meetings. And then the meetings are, we do these as background. So we'll talk with coaches and we'll talk with players, and we'll get some stuff that we can use for the broadcast. And I don't think I'm talking out of turn when I say this, because these coaches are a lot more open with us in meetings than they would be in a press conference situation. We sat down with Kevin Sumlin, who we had last week and we have again this week, head coach of the Houston Gamblers. And I asked him flat out, what do you make of this league so far? And he said, I am pleasantly surprised by the level of play that we've seen. And nobody knew really what was going to happen. If you're a coach or a player, your teams are put together and you show up and you go through a camp, but you don't know when the balls roll out there what exactly is going to happen. And to a man, you talk with these coaches, and that's the thing that they keep coming back to is, hey, look, the quality of football is good. I mean, it's continuing to get better. I think it's gotten better each week, and we're going to see blowouts like we saw in a game with Tampa Bay last week. Those are going to happen because it happens in a regular season for any league. But I really do think the football's been good, and the coaches seem most pleased with how that's gone. You can talk about everything else with a new league and trying to get out the kinks, and you've got all these different rules that you're trying to figure out and learn on the fly, and you're trying to figure out who's mic'd and who's not, and where's the camera and all this stuff. All of those things continue to evolve, but the level of football has to be there for people to be interested in it. And I don't know about you, and I'm probably biased on this, I think it's been pretty good football too. I've really enjoyed watching these games. Most of them have been really competitive coming down to the fourth quarter.
Well, and that's what I wanted to say, because there's been a lot, the ratings have come out. We got into beef with a lot of the CFL media guys this week, making fun of the USFL. I mean, I think you can criticize lots of things, right? You can criticize the idea of, do we need spring football in general, right? I think obviously the attendance issue has been top of mind for a lot of people, but I agree with you. I think that the quality of play, especially considering this is week 2 of the season, now going into week 3, we have, 2.5 weeks of training camp, 1 week of preseason. I think the level of play has far exceeded, I think, what I was looking forward to coming into the season.
Well, and you and I have both watched different spring leagues over the years and different attempts to have spring football. And we talked earlier in the conversation about the spring league that we did last year. And you didn't know week to week what maybe you were going to get. I think this has been a more consistent level of play too. So not only do you have good football, but it's a pretty consistent level of good football. And that's, I mean, you have to have that first. We are doing all kinds of cool stuff with production. We're doing all kinds of cool stuff with the rules in this league. But if the football's not good, it's hard to keep people in there. And I think that's the one of the many things the league has going for it right now is that the football's been pretty good the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, so you were on the Birmingham call last week. That was kind of the primetime game. Birmingham, just by nature of it being in the city there, that team gets a lot. This week, you said you have the Tampa game against Houston. What was it like, calling that game and kind of your experiences with that? And then I have some more questions.
It is fun to see how the city of Birmingham is kind of jumping behind this Birmingham team a little bit. And I don't think that's a big surprise. I think a lot of people expected Birmingham to back it. And, you're going to see hopefully some of those fans trickle over to some of the other games as the season goes along, since everything's being played in Birmingham. But calling that game, I mean, it felt good. It was a good football game. It's fun to watch, and to have that kind of energy, to have the fans there who are engaged in it, and you can hear them and they're present in that moment. That's a good thing. And it's good for the league, and it's a really good watch and or listen for people who are just casually stopping by to see what the USFL is all about.
Competitive too. I mean, it worked out well. I think, the Friday game was a little sleepy, on the FS1, but the Stars game I watched start to finish against the Maulers, and then I watched the Stallions game driving. I had to go to a gig and back, but great Saturday of football. I think if you were someone that was looking forward to, college ball or something here in the spring to kind of keep you occupied, right? No, there's no question. Look, this is a league for hardcore football fans. If you love football, you're going to watch the USFL. And in fact, we tailor parts of our broadcast to the hardcore football fan. Last week, we call it hardcore football. Joel Klatt will go real deep. Mark Sanchez this week will go real deep on specific plays and say, this is what you're looking for in the pocket. These are the different reads. And they'll break it all down from the quarterback standpoint in a way that you probably won't do in a college football game or an NFL game in the fall. But this gives you the opportunity to really go hardcore and try to even teach a little bit more about football, even to the folks who know football really well, because no matter how well you know the game, you don't know it the way a guy who's played in the NFL or sat in that pocket at a high level college knows the game. You can't. I can't. You can't. Nobody can unless they've been in those shoes. And so that's kind of where you go with this is, all right, let's delve hardcore football. And we did it last week. We'll continue to do it throughout the course of the season. I'm curious just from a production standpoint, and obviously, you being the on-air talent, you have your role. I'm just kind of curious. They have so many bells and whistles, right? And all this cool stuff and the drone. And I mean, it is cool. We're doing the drives where we just hear the coach calls, and we're doing these, we're tossing to Brock all the time. He's interviewing people. Did you guys have to go through like run-throughs and stuff? I mean, obviously you've done stuff before and been involved in that, but just the high level of everything they're trying to do. Cause it's been a really clean broadcast with everything that's been thrown at it.
Yeah, it's unique. I can tell you that. And when we had a little bit of this with the spring league last year, where there were different guys mic'd up and you could hear the quarterback and coach conversation, but this has gone to a completely different level with that. So it really does require less from me in a lot of ways, which, it's kind of it's a unique thing. I do a lot of radio, as you know, and I also do TV, and TV requires less than radio when you're doing play-by-play. And this version of TV requires even less than a normal version of TV. So, I mean, there's a lot of times in the game where I don't say much for 2, 3, 5, 6 plays, maybe more. I mean, and that's by design. And the whole point of this is you want to be able to hear what's going on the field. And so for the USFL, we're trying to take you as close as we can to the game, put you in the huddle. You hear what the players are saying on and off the field. You hear what the coaches are saying on and off the field. And those, like you mentioned, that the drive where we'll just listen to a coach from start to finish. He'll have his commentary on during the drive, and we'll hear what he has to say as the play is unfolding. I mean, it's a very different thing. But yeah, we have some run-throughs. We have some practices where it's like, okay, in this position, you're going to have to not say something. And during this drive coming up, we're going to kind of just lay out and let people listen to all the microphones and watch all the different angles that we have and get into the game that way. So it's a really different thing. And I think for the crew, for our side of things, once we got used to having all that, because that's new for everybody, it's new for the crew too. Once we got used to having all that, it really has flowed nicely on air.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously you have Fox Sports and some of the best minds in the business, working on everything. But it is just, it's still a new league and it's this new stadium. And I mean, we were down there for the kickoff and we were at the hotel across the street. And, you could hear them doing the run-throughs and figuring stuff out. But I mean, to be on broadcast like that and really have the broadcast be as clean as they have been for a new thing it just speaks to everyone involved with that. Like I said, I used to be kind of in that world, not nearly as in depth with Fox Sports, but crazy just how clean everything's been and how high produced everything's been.
Yeah, we've got two really good producers in Chuck McDonald, who is the lead college football producer for Fox, and Mark Titleman, who is actually my producer for our NFL package in the fall. And so you've got two high-class, really solid producers to start this whole thing. We've got great directors, and our crew has been fantastic. I mean, the audio crew, the drone pilots, everybody that's involved in this, and there's so many more involved in it than even a normal NFL Sunday afternoon game. I mean, we don't have drone pilots on our NFL games most of the time. We've got every camera known to man, woman, and child out there. We've got cameras and helmets, ref cams, shoe cam. You name a place, we've probably got a camera on it out there. And we're probably going to show you the angle from that camera at least once during a broadcast.
It just seems cool. It seems like this is every idea that anyone's ever wanted to do, right? And maybe some of this stuff makes its way to the NFL, but it's kind of like, what do we have to lose here? Like, let's just roll with it. And like the ref cams, and we've got some of them are even like the frame rate. You're only seeing like every fifth frame or something but yeah, it's cool. You're seeing a lot more. I like that it is this experimental because, I mean, the original XFL birthed the Sky Cam that we have now in the NFL. I mean, these are things that do, tangibly translate over to other leagues and camps.
Oh, there's no doubt. You get the chance. From a broadcast standpoint, we see it with rules in the USFL. You get the chance at a rules standpoint to play with stuff and see how it works in a real live situation. Maybe you don't want to gamble with that during an NFL broadcast or during an NFL season where you gamble with a rules change. But in the USFL, you can do that. Let's see what this looks like. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, okay, we'll try something else. You get the chance to really tinker. And anybody who's been in this business knows that engineers, camera folks, producers, directors love to tinker. And they love to think, well, what if I do this? Well, what if I try this? Let's see how it works. Let's see how it goes there. Maybe it doesn't work. Maybe it does. And I think they're the same way with the rules. We've seen different rules in different spring leagues. We saw it last year in the spring league that I did for Fox. And you're seeing it again this year with the USFL, some really fun rules that they're probably not all going to the NFL, but maybe one or two of those get adopted in the next 3 or 4 years because you see how well it works in real application on a football field in a real live game.
I have flashbacks to Jerry Glanville and Hal Mummy trying to figure out the overtime and like, we're going to pick our spot. Okay, now you're going to go the other way. And they had no clue. It was like this 5-minute explanation. But, I mean, what do you have to lose here? It's something that you can experiment with.
Yeah, I have flashbacks of that as well, trying to figure out how am I going to decipher all of that for the audience at home because they don't really know and they're not sure the officials knew at that moment. That was one that John Harbaugh loved with the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. Loves that overtime rule. But then when it was applied in the spring league a year ago, I don't know. It was a very confusing thing for sure.
Now that you've been involved in the USFL, we've kicked off. I mean, are we having lots of conversations with people? Like, is this something that I'm just always curious? Like, does it exist just in our niche? Is this permeating? I mean, how widespread are you having conversations about this?
I think it's still kind of in the niche world right now, where it is people are learning that it's happening, and that's okay. This is the first year. It's week 3, so it's not surprising that it is still trying to figure out a way to blossom. But we saw it with the ratings, especially in week 1. There were a lot of eyes that were tuned in. There were a lot of eyes that were exposed to this for the first time, and the football was good. So maybe some of them come back you'll see, I think, some good numbers this week. Both of the games on Saturday are on over-the-air Fox, Network Fox. So I think you'll see some good numbers for the games. And look, they put the Birmingham game on in prime time on Saturday night, which will have a crowd, which will have a lot of intrigue, 2 undefeated teams. I mean, there's just a lot to talk about for the games on Fox this weekend. And the more these games show up, the more people see them, the more they're going to be intrigued by what they see. And I think that's where you start to grow it. You can't expect in week 3 of a brand new league to have everybody just like, oh, this is great, and all of us are going to watch it. It's going to take time. I mean, look, it's a brand new thing. And as it grows and Fox continues to be committed to it and NBC continues to be committed to it, it's going to have the opportunity to blossom. There is a spot. I firmly believe this. You and I talked about this last year. There is a spot in the American sports landscape for spring football. There just is. There's enough of a passionate fan base for football that you can find room in the American sports landscape for it. And I think the USFL has a good shot to be that spring league.
Yeah, I just don't know what else are we airing now. What else is Fox running with? They've built, we have 4 games a week on this across, and obviously some of them are on, Peacock or FS1, whatever. But I never understand this now. Here, Netflix is giving Martin Scorsese like $300 million to go make a movie or whatever. And it's like, we don't have, we can't figure out a network to do. I do agree. I agree. I don't know if it's USFL or XFL, but someone's got to crack this because the drive for content for all these platforms is too high right now.
Well, and I mean, we've known this for a long time. The one thing that consistently draws eyes to television still is live sports. Live sports is the ultimate leader. If I'm a fan, I don't want to watch a DVR game unless I have to. I want to watch it live because more likely than not, it's going to be spoiled for me by somebody in social media if I really want to see this game. So I'm going to watch it live. And look, live sports and specifically live football is a huge, huge driver in the world of American sports today. And if you can put football on your TV, you've got an excellent chance to bring people in. But as I said earlier, it's got to be decent football. The quality has to be good. You can get them in one time, but if it's not very good, they don't come back. That's where I think the USFL has a bit of an advantage right now over some others, is that the football's been good and it's only going to get better. You've got legitimate coaches and these teams are going to start to continue to improve over the weeks to come.
I have a voicemail here from longtime listener Van. I'm going to play. Van wanted to send in like 6. I said we can do one. So I have a question, and this continues off of our conversation we had about you prepping for players in the spring league last year, right? And kind of the extra work that goes into that maybe people don't think about. So hopefully this works.
My question is for Kevin. When you're preparing for a broadcast, do you actually go talk to each player to find out the proper pronunciation of their name? And how long does it take you and your spotter to build up your lineup card so that you have all this background information that you folks discuss during a broadcast? Appreciate your time and enjoy your broadcast.
Both really good questions. Pronunciation is one of the things that I am an absolute stickler for. When you're doing NFL games, it's a lot easier because they, a lot of the guys are guys you've seen 5, 6, 7 years, so you've learned it. But B, there's just a lot of support behind that. The one thing that's been really good about the USFL is they have really worked on pronunciations. But the other thing that makes that easier is that college programs, college sports information departments have done a really good job of making those pronunciations known. So I'll go and look at a bio from somebody from their college days. Some of these now have actual vocal pronunciations from those people as to how they say their name on the website, so I can actually listen to them say their name. To me, pronunciation is something that I am an absolute stickler about, and if I mispronounce something, it sticks in my craw for a long, long time. And as far as building my boards, I do it myself. That's always been the best way that I can learn how to do that and learn about the teams. I type them all up myself, try to do as much research as I can. Some of it's easier than others. Guys who have gone to Mars Hill, for example, not as easy to find information on those guys as somebody who went to Oklahoma or Alabama. Obviously, there's a lot more people interested in that. So there's more stories written about that. There's more information available. But you try to find as much as you can about each and every player because in a league like the USFL, it's all about opportunity. And there's so many great stories to tell of guys who have gone all over the world to try to help their dream become a reality. That's the biggest appeal for me, Reed, in doing spring football and doing the USFL is these dudes are going all out just to try to have a shot to get noticed playing the game they love. And they're 27, 28, 29 years old, and their story isn't known. And it's a really cool thing to be able to tell just one of those stories sometime about a guy who you don't know, or maybe you recognize him, and then for 3 years you haven't seen him, and all of a sudden here's this dude again that you remember because he played against Georgia one time, and you saw him have a big game. Where has this guy been? That's the excitement for me. The passion for me comes in being able to tell those stories.
Well, that's the thing is, people, and we get critical about these things. And I had Pat, one of the writers, on last week. We were talking about a lot of this stuff. It is this one shot for guys. Like, I know Matt Mangles, a longtime friend of the show. He's been in the spring league. He went up and played in the CFL, opted to come back, play in the USFL. He's on the Stars. And it was so cool to text him because they won last week, text him congratulations. And to be able to tell him, the announcers, and I know you didn't call it his game, but Joel and them were so high on you. And when you came out, and they were like, oh man, this guy is killing it. And he's from USC, all this kind of stuff. And for them to get that and know, right, that message is getting out, their story is getting out, it's really priceless. Because like you said, they just haven't had the opportunity to have a lot of eyeballs on a lot of their stuff and ears on their story.
No, and that's the cool thing about, I'm doing the Bandits, as you know, this weekend. And they have a linebacker named Christian Sam, with 16 tackles this year. Christian Sam was a 6th-round pick of the Patriots. He led the Pac-12 in tackles all the way back in 2017, but never has played in the NFL despite being a draft pick. Bounced around with Miami a little bit, San Francisco a little bit, the Lions a little bit, Patriots a little bit, never got into a game, always in camps, trying to figure out a way to stick on a team. Spent last spring with the Jousters in the spring league, and it's a guy who led the Pac-12 in tackles. So you're not talking about a guy who was an unknown. He led a major conference in tackles. If you're a college football fan, you probably ran across his name at some point, but that was 5 years ago. What's happened to this guy? Well, those are the kind of stories that are fun to tell, because somebody watching that game this weekend is going, I remember that dude. He was really good in that year. He was all over the field. Where's he been? Well, he's been doing what so many guys do when they leave college, trying to figure out a way to get to that next level. For him now, that next level is USFL. And he's off to a really good start. 16 tackles in 2 games. See what he can keep doing over the rest of the year. It's those kind of stories, I think, that hook people into the USFL.
This has been great. I know you're busy prepping everything for the weekend. We have the big NFL draft on as well that I know the people. Anything else to get from you? This has been so good and insightful, because I just don't think people get, you guys that are worked in all this, in these alt leagues, it is so much more work to do them. It's so much more research to figure everything out. I think we said before when we talked spring league, like everyone knows Tom Brady's story, but not everyone knows Christian, whoever. You have to do all that deep dive. It really is the love and the passion to do what you do in these leagues.
Yeah, it is. And I hope that passion for all of us comes through when you're watching, because if you're watching, I've always believed that if you're watching and the broadcaster isn't having fun and doesn't seem engaged in it, I'm a fan just like you and everybody else when I watch games. If the person calling the game doesn't seem like they're into the game, then that's saying to me, well, I don't need to invest any time in this because they're not into it. There's no reason for me to be here. They don't even act like they want to be here. So you'll never get that from me. I think this stuff is so cool. I think the USFL is has had a great start, and I think it's only going to get better. And I hope people, if you've not tried it, I hope you'll give it a try. I think you're going to enjoy what you see. It's different because there's so much going on. There's so much different audio, so many different cameras, different rules involved, different players to learn, but it's worth time that you have. If you can invest a little time in it, I don't think you're going to be disappointed.
Well, Kevin, I really appreciate it. I'm glad that you can be involved in this. We meet these friends along the way, and then they get into higher and higher places. I really appreciate that. And thank you for taking the time today to come on the show.
No, it's my pleasure. I enjoyed it last year. We'll do it again.
Thanks. Well, I'm delighted today, and especially because of his shirt choice. I think he's trying to impress a friend of the podcast now, Amar Doman. We have Evan Willsmore sporting a wonderful BC Lions shirt. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. A lot of good news to cover this week, so just looking forward to chatting it up with you.
Yeah, this is going to be good. So Evan is kind of my catch-all this week. We have a lot of XFL stuff we're going to start with. We're going to do some USFL stuff, and then we're going to talk CFL rule changes at the end. So first off, I guess we'll start chronologically. We have your article here on XFL Newshub came out. We had June Jones, likes to run his mouth a little bit. We had June Jones spoiling potentially the XFL returning to Seattle and him being involved with the team as the offensive coordinator. Why don't you walk us through kind of your article and what we know so far?
Right. So it was a few days ago now, I think on a Monday or Tuesday. But June Jones put in his Twitter bio that he was going to be the offensive coordinator in the XFL under Jim Haslett for a team in Seattle. So obviously there's a lot to unpack there. And he had that up for maybe half an hour and then took it down once word started to get around that, maybe he wasn't supposed to put that out there yet. But it told us a lot. Of course, Jim Haslett was one of the coaches that was announced as part of the 8 coaches back a few weeks ago now. It's almost been a month, I guess, but that happened. He put that out there, and again, under Jim Haslett, that means there's a team in Seattle. And my article, I said, we don't know if it's going to be the Dragons yet. We don't know if they have the naming rights still, or you might know more about that than me. But he's going to be offensive coordinator in Seattle under Jim Haslett. That's what I was able to take away from that. And we believe that this took place at the meeting in Dallas or Arlington, which happened, I think, last week too. All the XFL people were meeting there, and we believe that, maybe they were sorting out coaches there, something of that manner. I've talked to a few people that say there might be an announcement coming as soon as next week. So lots of exciting stuff. But yeah, that article was just sort of highlighting June and, what he's done, what he did in the XFL in 2020 with the Roughnecks, but then most importantly, what he brings to the table coming back in 2023. And so far, he's the only guy confirmed returning from the XFL. The only other guy is Bob Stoops, who was the coach of the Renegades and spent many seasons as the head coach in Oklahoma. So exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's weird. Like June was the one that, we had just started the podcast and he was one that came out, the XFL, they've got their TV deal all set up and they're ready to go. And he kind of got the kibosh put down on that. It's so funny to me, and I'll put up the tweet here so people can see it because like you said, it's since been removed from his Twitter bio, but you're savvy enough to go on to think I'm going to go on and change my Twitter bio, but you're not obviously that people are going to see this. Obviously people are going to figure out about this. It's just funny to me. Obviously a lot was made that June wasn't part of the 8 coaches that were rolled out, right, with the Hines Wards and everybody else. Good to see him involved, still with the XFL. Thoughts on him not being the head coach, but just being an offensive coordinator?
Yeah, I definitely thought it was an interesting choice. I thought maybe, he didn't want to have that pressure of a head coach anymore at this point in his career, or maybe there was just a better candidate on the table. But I mean, personally, I love June Jones. I love his sort of offensive style. I loved what he did in the XFL. He used to coach in Hamilton back in 2017, 2018. He was in the original USFL. And then recently he was in the Spring League, I think, not last year, but the year before in 2020 when they had the season delayed. So, no, just a great guy, great coach. I do think as an offensive coordinator, he'll be able to sort of hone in on his skills more because he's always been an offensive guy. Him and Mouse Davis kind of invented that run and shoot offense that propelled the Roughnecks to great success with PJ Walker and Cam Phillips, of course, all the XFL celebrities, I guess you could say. But I think it's a good fit for him. And Jim Haslett, I didn't mention this in my article, but he's a pretty defensive guy. I think his last job was the linebackers coach for the Titans. So, I'm excited to sort of see them mesh where, Jim Haslett will probably focus on, the defense and that sort of, stopping the offense, but then you're going to have June Jones controlling their own offense, which is going to be just as explosive probably as it was in Houston, because everywhere where he's gone, he's set records. People who really know him well will remember, his time at Hawaii where he coached Colt Brennan and they set a bunch of records. So it's, again, just very exciting. And I'm excited to see him sort of in that sole coordinator role where he doesn't have to manage as much. I feel like the offense will only be better from there with Haslett and in Seattle, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the better part of a year now, people, June Jones is going to go back, going to be Houston, Roughnecks are going to run it back, kind of all that stuff. I mean, Seattle really was one of the more struggling franchises in the original XFL, right? You had Jim Zorn there. Mike Riley was the original offensive coordinator. He had to leave for health concern, and now it's interesting, all his stories that are coming out in the USFL with his wife. I wonder if that was involved in all that as well, maybe why he had to take time off with the original XFL. So you had Jim Zorn kind of doing a lot of the play calling for the Dragons. I can tell you that was not a successful combination. I saw both in person at the stadium. We were at the 50-yard line, first row there, watching the games. And then I can tell you on TV, seeing Jim very concerned with being able to do play calling. So this is huge. I mean, like you said, Jim Haslett, tremendous career. We kind of know where he's going to go now too, right? Because they had the original XFL coach announcement 2 weeks ago now. Coaches, we are coaches with no teams or cities, right? Like a man has no name. And now at least we're kind of putting the pieces together. Jim Haslett in Seattle with June Jones. Thoughts on, we don't know if the Dragons are going to come back. Like you said, trademark issues. I remember talking with Andrew Murray, your friend of mine, also from XFL Newshub. A lot of the new XFL logo doesn't really mesh with like this Dragons logo. It almost meshes more with those secondary logos, like the Battlehawks one. The Dragon had that S. I would be curious to see, and I want to get your thoughts on that. Like if we keep it the Dragons, I can't see this logo existing in that same world.
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny. I didn't notice this until recently, but somebody pointed out with all the USFL stuff. The USFL is playing at Protective Stadium, which is the home of the UAB Dragons, University of Alabama, Birmingham. And I kind of picked up that, those two logos look similar, the Dragons logo and the UAB logo. That's not the first time the XFL has had logo problems. I think the Roughnecks had their sort of logo issue because it was similar to the Oilers from back in the day. But I do think, considering the league changed their logo and sort of their identity, the whole dreams begin with the X thing, I do think that the logos will also change. And I think they might follow a more, I don't know what's the word, like an aesthetic or a certain style approach, because, they've already sort of done, if you look at the way they announced the coaching hires and things like that, everything was sort of set up in a chronological manner. And like you could tell that they were really thinking that through, and there's just a specific way they want to portray themselves now. I think that's one of the things that they're making a priority is in the world of media and all this digital stuff. You want to have a good product on Twitter and Instagram and everything just to bring in more fans and retain the fans from the old league. So yeah, I definitely think there's going to be a few logo changes. Even if they were to keep some of the names and the cities, I think that, for trademark issues or for other things, that just, again, a refresh would be a nice welcome, whatever.
Yeah, I don't, obviously the Cleveland Guardians, that whole issue, right, with going on with New York. I almost said DC. I always think DC Guardians. But, I've never thought the Roughnecks was like a great name. That to me feels a little bit more like Vince McMahon. We're the Roughnecks. And it sounds too much like Rednecks. It sounds too much. I never really got behind that branding. I mean, obviously the team is successful. Dallas Renegades is fine. They've had trouble with that trademark as well. So I could just see a whole refresh across the board. I mean, I really wouldn't be surprised with that. I've said a long time, I think XFL homers are going to run into trouble as well, kind of holding on to some of these past things. And I don't know if they're too interested in that, especially with all these city changes. Do you like and we'll transition here to Vegas, but do you like them? The teams in Texas, we're pulling out of LA potentially, we're pulling out of New York. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's important for them to sort of retain a West Coast presence to some extent. Now we have an idea that Seattle might be coming back and, Vegas might be the new LA. But, I think the sort of city strategy that they might be planning out, of course, we don't know where the cities are going to be yet, but a good guess is that they're sort of doing it, where they know football markets have been strong or they're increasing. So obviously Texas is a huge football market. I do like that they're keeping a lot of teams there, although if the USFL moves out of their hub format and lasts in the next year, there could be some competition, but we'll get to that eventually. But I think, Vegas to me is huge. That one really stood out to me above anything. Vegas is really becoming a football city now, just in the past few years. I mean, the Raiders moved there obviously, but then they've had the Pro Bowl, and then the draft is today, which is going to be outside of the Bellagio, I think. So a lot of football related stuff there. The Shrine Bowl was there too, the college all-star game, hosted by, quick shout out to Eric Dalko, who used to work in the XFL. Great guy. Great product at the Shrine Bowl. They're doing great things over there. But no, I think the cities are going to be great. The two, I guess, that I would like to see return, there's St. Louis is one, and then a Florida team. It's probably not going to be Tampa. It sounds like it's going to be Orlando now. I'd like to see those two return because the Apollos had success in the AAF in Orlando, and that might be kind of a cool revival. And then San Antonio was where the Commanders were. Not the Washington Commanders, the San Antonio Commanders. We've got to make that distinction to people who don't know now. But the San Antonio Commanders were there, and I've been to San Antonio several times. It's an underrated football market, I'd say. Just kind of like St. Louis, they're hungry for football, and that would be a place where I think ticket sales would be through the roof, assuming they don't follow the hub format like the USFL is doing. But no. I think they're going to do a great job with the cities, and I trust the ownership group in making good decisions and the right choices. But to me, the most important part is that West Coast presence, just because the USFL has no West Coast teams, and I feel like they did a good job. There was the Wildcats and, the Dragons, all those teams in the original XFL. So, yeah, I'd be excited to see that happen.
Yeah, I think as more that we talk about this, we had the XFL announcement last week of Texas as the headquarters. A lot's been made. I've talked with listener Max, give him credit. I know Mark's written articles as well for XFL Newshub. I don't think it's going to be a bubble, right? I think, or a hub. I think that they have seen that, some of the backlash that they've gotten, the USFL, some of the issues maybe with attendance that way. I want to talk about that as well coming up. But if we keep everyone in Texas, if we practice in Texas, you fly to Seattle, you fly to Vegas, you fly to, DC for the weekend, play your games, come back. You're saving a little bit of money that way. You're keeping everyone housed together. You're able to practice all on the same fields and stuff. That feels more like what they're doing than the USFL. Okay, we're going to have Birmingham and New Orleans and whoever all play in Birmingham. It feels like, I think whether or not this was their original plan, I think they're seeing the backlash of the USFL hub, and I think they're learning from that, which is an advantage to going second in terms of this race.
Yeah, for sure.
So we have, and I pulled it up here, Terrell Buckley, that's the one that's talking about the Orlando. He had come out with that. So the San Antonio, the Orlando with that. I don't love the three teams in Texas, but if you're housing everyone there and flying around, I think that's, I don't know. I don't think LA is worth dying over if we're worried about getting here to season 2. The other news, and this came out last night. I tweeted this. It got a lot of attention on mine. Listener Max sent this over. Rock was at the airport with Connor Whittam, who is one of the head guys for the $7 production over there. He's with The Rock on all of his stuff. From the Vegas airport, wheels up. Thank you, Las Vegas, for the unbelievable love. Love you back. We have big plans for your amazing city. With the rumors, right, Mike Mitchell's reporting of the Vegas franchise, I feel like it's pretty confident to say he was there working on that. What do you think about that? That got a lot of attention. I was surprised with how much just my retweet of that got in terms of eyeballs for this.
Oh, definitely. And I think, we just spoke about how I thought Vegas would be, a really good city for the XFL. But if you go back to 2001, when there was the team there, that was a very popular team, maybe for different reasons, because back then the XFL was a bit more, off the rails, I guess would be a good term. But no, again, Vegas would be just such a great place for a team. I really do think it's an XFL city, given sort of the vibe. And, there's a lot of people there just to begin with. So even if there's not directly XFL fans, people would still come check out the games, I feel like, because it's so close to the city. That would definitely be exciting.
I think it makes a lot of sense. I've seen a lot of concern about that, a lot of concern of, Vegas is becoming oversaturated now. I don't buy that. I think Vegas is a good tourist destination. I think maybe some of the trouble you have with players living in Vegas, and they ran into that the last year with the Raiders, like little extracurriculars outside of football. If you're housing everyone in Texas, I think you get away from that. I don't know. It works to me. I think you still keep that West Coast presence with maybe not something as. I think you just get swallowed up in LA. I don't think XFL is a big enough name really to resonate there. It's the same with New York. I think the New York media has other things to talk about in terms of that. But it's exciting. If The Rock's there right now talking through XFL stuff with them, I mean, these city announcements have to be coming soon. I mean, we're end of April now as we kind of look at the calendar.
Right.
Any other thoughts on the Vegas stuff? We'll transition to USFL. Any other takeaways you have of the coaches? Any other thoughts on? We've had a lot of XFL news the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'll touch on the coaches quickly first, and I got one more point about the Vegas thing. But with the coaches, so in my June Jones article, I mentioned, a few. Well, I really only mentioned one possible candidate to return, although I definitely think there's probably a dozen that I have written down. But the one that really stands out to me is Hal Mumme, who used to be the offensive coordinator for the Renegades under Bob Stoops. So Hal Mumme is a big air raid guy. Another offensive system similar to what June Jones does with the run and shoot. They were less successful with it in the XFL, but I do believe that, Hal Mumme, after that, he went to the Spring League, won a championship with the linemen, looked great there, put a quarterback in the NFL. So I really do believe that, Hal Mumme is probably at the top of coordinator availability, for the XFL. And then just with the Vegas thing for one last, funny bit before we transition, I was thinking the other day, especially with The Rock's post about, the Vegas stuff. And I figured that'd be the perfect place to start the beer snake again. We got to bring that back. I think that's one thing for the XFL that has to be done, because that was, I talked to all my friends, and the one thing that they remember about the XFL, because they didn't really watch it, they remember seeing the beer snake. And I said, we got to bring it back in some form in 2023. So again, excited for that. Hopefully it returns.
I think it's good. I like the Vegas. These are all easy flights. Dallas to Vegas. This is all easily transitable, however you want to say the word. With that, I like the Vegas aspect of it. You're calling back the Outlaws back in the day, right? Paul McCallum, who's been on the show multiple times. He's a CFL legend kicker. He scored the first ever points for the XFL back in 2001 with the Outlaws. If they do the XFL Vegas thing, we'll bring Paul back on. Paul's got like crazy stories. I mean, I think that the XFL 2001 was like nuts when they were in Vegas partying. I really think we could get some fun stories out of Paul. Do you think, before we move on, Hal Mumme's back with Bob Stoops, right? I mean, does that make sense to you?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think, if Hal Mumme comes back, it's a 95% chance it's under Bob Stoops. I would say so, yeah.
I like that. Keep him in Dallas, run it back, right? Renegades, run it back again. That to me makes more sense. I am surprised with the June Jones as the OC. Like you said, maybe he just doesn't want the pressure anymore. I mean, that's just, you got a lot more on your plate. Balance that out with Jim Haslett. I like that. As a Seattle guy, I like June. Although I'm not the biggest, I don't know. June gets in trouble sometimes. I said in the group chat, I single-handedly blame June Jones for the hysteria that was seen from the CFL XFL merger talks, because June was the first one that came out that said they're going to go to 4 downs. And I to this day, I blame June Jones for a lot of the drama that we dealt with in those 6 months.
Yeah. I mean, June has always been a guy, last point here, but like I said, I love June, but he's always been, a very, I guess, I don't want to say casual in a bad way, but, he turned up at the XFL press conference with a Hawaiian shirt and a lei. He's always been very laid back. He coached at Hawaii for several years. He's kind of taken on that, island lifestyle, if you would say. So I think sometimes, maybe, especially given his age too, he wasn't around back when he started coaching. Like, social media wasn't really a huge thing, and you could maybe say more things. So I feel like that still carries over into what we see now. And it's kind of funny sometimes. Again, love June, great coach, probably like my favorite coach of all time. But, I did think that was funny when he put that in his Twitter bio. I knew something was wrong. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. All right. So transitioning USFL, we're coming off. I just had Kevin Kugler on. We're transitioning into this here on the show. What have you made of the quality of play, USFL, kind of high level stuff? Now we're going into week 3.
Yeah, I really enjoyed week 2. I thought most of it was an upgrade from week 1. Of course, there were still some lopsided games, and there were still some plays where it's like, okay, what are you doing? Is this a lack of training or practice or whatever? But I think that's always going to happen with a new league. Overall, I was very impressed with the play. Quick shout out to Brian Scott for leading the league in passing yards, and he's been great. He went on RJ Young's show with the USFL podcast over on Fox. He was kind of breaking down, what it means to him to have this opportunity, and just a great guy. He's really handling this well, and to see guys like him get that opportunity, because he played at a D3 school as a quarterback. This is huge for him. Just to see guys get that opportunity, that's what I'm all for, and that's what these leagues are all about. So it's been good to see that over those first 2 weeks as well.
Yeah, I'm excited. I know Matt. I texted Matt Mangle after the game when they won. I think Matt looked great. I think he got a lot of compliments from the announce team over there. I think Brian needs to slow down a little bit. If I could be a whisper in his ear, kind of give him some advice. I think this is a really big stage for him. I think the spring league and everything else, I think he was always kind of the big fish in the small pond. And I think this is a big showcase for him. I think he has excelled tremendously, but you see a little bit with him. Hey, we got to go, guys. We got to go. I thought it was interesting. They had the United by Football show, right, with Brian Scott holding the house meetings. I said, I messaged a couple of people. I said, if the USFL was like Big Brother or Survivor, Brian Scott would definitely be voted out first. Like having to have the house meeting with all the wide receivers, having to have the house meeting, bring everyone over. Brian's got his own rental home. I thought that was interesting. A lot of these guys are sharing. It was Brian Scott's rental home, in the United by Football. As someone that's known Brian a long time, it's funny to have him as a character on there. And obviously they're playing that up. How do you think Brian's come across on the United by Football?
Yeah, I haven't seen a whole lot of that episode with Brian in it, so I won't touch too much on that for the sake of, just like being respectable. But I do think that, as a character, just seeing him, on the sideline in interviews and watching him play. I put this out on Twitter too, but you can really tell that his past experience in this league specifically is paying off. And it's paying off, I think, more than some other players, just because he spent all that time in the spring league with Bart Andrus and has just kind of been training for several years really for this opportunity. Some guys come off the street, they had a COVID year, they're not prepared. And, I'm not trying to hate on them or push any negative press towards them, but I'm just saying, I think Brian has sort of stayed on top of everything through all this, and he's really believed in himself, and now it's finally paying off, like I touched on before, just to see that, finally, like him getting that big break on such a big stage, I think is really, again, what these leagues are all about. And that's why I encourage more people to watch it, because, even if the product isn't on a level of like the NFL, I mean, it's still, you're seeing guys that could possibly sign NFL contracts later, or they could, start making a name for themselves in these league. And, the XFL sort of had kind of a cult following back in 2001. They had the He Hate Me guy, blanking on his actual name, but
Rod Smart.
Yes, Rod Smart. Yeah, it was Rod someone. I knew that, but they sort of, you get these players that kind of have a cult following, and I think Brian, might end up being one of those guys, just because he's successful and he kind of has a bit of swagger to him, which I've always liked. But no, again. Yeah, excited for him. There's a lot of other people I'm excited for too, of course, but I'm just very excited and interested to see how this goes for the next 8 weeks or whatever we have left of the regular season.
It's good. And I would say, yeah, the United by Football, anyone give that a shot. I think it's such a bite size. It's like 40 minutes. I think they have done a tremendous job. But I do mean that, like, you kind of got to look at it with a little bit of reality TV eyes to it, right? I mean, they're recording all this stuff, but it is, if you look at it through the world of a reality TV, voting people off, it is, we have Boogie Roberts. He's a character. We have Chase Demore. He's a character. We've established now, we're week 2, right? We have kind of our main players in that show. And I think that that's interesting. I like that the Stars were one of the focal points of that. I know that Matt Mangle were recording him, doing mic stuff with him. And I think he was saying like they were coming too close. They were getting in my way when I was trying to like practice and do preseason stuff. So maybe that's why he isn't in the show as much. As I think he was a little more focused. You know, Matt, it's like, I'm going to go play football. Like, I'm not going to deal with all this stuff. So we had the ratings come out. This has been kind of the interesting stuff this week. I'm adjusting my camera here. It's getting the light shifting in my room here. 58% down week 1 to week 2. A lot has been made. We have Brian Woods' brother tweeting out, XFL people need to be quiet. We have, the vice president, Robert Gadib, I think I'm pronouncing his name right, he's one of the Fox execs, right? We had, who else did I see? A lot of, basically like anyone, Ed Hartman didn't tweet out anything, but basically anyone involved with the league, from a social media perspective, tweeting out, don't worry, the sky isn't falling. What do you make of the 58% drop in week 1 to week 2?
Well, it's not the first time we've seen it in spring football. Week 1 always attracts a lot of buzz because people are excited to see a new product. But, after that, sometimes they've had enough with it. And, I think those drops are expected, even if they are dramatic. It happened in the AAF, and, the XFL wasn't as bad. But, like, it happened in all these leagues. That's my point. And, I saw that. And to be honest, I wasn't that concerned because, again, I expected it. I've studied this kind of thing before. I was like, okay, week 1 is probably going to be the highest you're going to get. So you may as well make a good impression. I thought they did a decent job. Again, I do think the play in week 2 increased. So it's a shame that, maybe those could have been swapped and then the ratings the drop would have been a bit less significant. But I think those ratings, usually the plummet from week 1 to week 2 is probably the worst you'll see. And after that, they kind of just stabilize on the way, and you get about the same amount of viewership every week, which is, of course, a lot lower than you had in week 1. But the most important part here, of course, is those primetime TV deals. AAF and XFL had them too, but that's what I feel like is really going to keep them afloat, is like, at least people will be able to see it on their TV guide, because, if you don't have that, then people are really not going to know who you are. And we've seen that. I guess we haven't seen it with too many other leagues because they were broadcasting, like the Spring League on FS2 or FS1 sometimes. But, even that wasn't getting the same type of press. So sort of having that mainstream Fox or NBC, ABC, whatever it is, even ESPN, of course, the USFL doesn't have to deal with them. But just having those primetime TV deals is really important, and that will get some viewership every week, regardless of the numbers.
Yeah, and, a lot's been made, right? I think the Fox NBC numbers, I think, are the ones that I'm focused on. Like this FS1, Friday. So we have the numbers here on USA Friday. They pulled in 363,000. That was down. Everything was down, but that was the USA game on Sunday. The week before was 771,000. Obviously, Sunday versus Friday. Saturday game on Fox got 1.05 million viewers. The Saturday night game on FS1 got 400,000 viewers. And then the Saturday, it was split. Sorry, it was between FS1 and FS2. So 402 and then 88,000 for that, the split of that game. And then the Sunday game on NBC got 757,000. That's the drop to me that's the scariest, going from 2.1 Sunday the previous week to 700,000 on NBC on Sunday the following week. That to me is the scariest drop off there.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's, again, it doesn't look good on paper, but I almost expected it. Like, I was one of those people who, saw the tweets of the numbers and gasped. I was like, oh my God, the league is going to fail. To me, I was more like, okay, it's not a good look. Like, that's a significant decrease, but, that's like I said before, that's probably the worst drop off you're going to see. It might still continue to drop. Don't get me wrong. Like, I don't think it's going to, stay at that 771,000 or go up from there. But I think the drop off will be, I don't know. I can't give you a specific number, but like maybe 50,000 per week from now on. Like, that's not, compared to a number literally in the millions between week 1 and week 2. But no, I'm not shocked. I'm not horrified. And I don't think that this is the league's biggest, it shouldn't be the league's biggest worry right now or biggest concern, even though some people saying, it is. My main issue, I think, is like keeping the quality of the play, to a sufficient level, because, people are really going to stop watching if, you have like a Panthers Generals type game that we saw. That was the first game of week 2, where it's, 10-6 and, quarterback play isn't great and defenses are, middle of the pack at best. I think that kind of thing, you can't have too many repeats of those games if you want to keep viewership up. But week 2 is overall positive. Like the Stars Maulers game, I thought was great. And the Stallions Gamblers game might have been even better, although I only saw 5 minutes of that one or whatever. But no, I think overall, even with the viewership decline, there's still a lot of positives to take away from week 2.
If I could workshop, and when I criticize, and there's been a lot made this week, criticizing leagues, hating on leagues, I don't do this to hate on anything. I criticize. I always like to give tangible things that we can work on. If it was me, and I've seen a lot, and it's Robert Gottlieb, I think is pronouncing it right. A lot of this, like, we have to build. Ed Hartman did tweet out, like, well, he's the EVP of USFL. Well, it takes more than 2 weeks, right, to build habits and all that stuff. You only get one shot for a first impression, right? Anything in life, especially TV. If I could have workshopped it, I would have done at least two more weeks of training camp, done a couple more preseason. I know they did the shortened timeline to save money, right? Well, why do we want to pay for another 2-3 weeks? We're housing all these guys, we're feeding all these guys. But the problem is, that first game was fine. The first, the Birmingham Generals game started off hot. It slowed a little bit. I think the crowd there really carried it kind of over maybe the quality that game actually was. But then you did kind of have 3 stinkers. Friday night was a stinker, and then we finally got the doubleheader Saturday. So you had gone through 4 games then since the kickoff to finally get like 2 really good games, and then the Sunday game was good. And I'm just afraid that those 4 games and the drop off that happened, all of them, like, now the gameplay is good. I don't know if we're showing back up this week now. That's what I fear with the audience, is you only get that one shot to make a first impression. I would have gotten these guys a little bit more reps before we hit the prime time games and tried to do a little bit more preseason. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a whole discussion about how the training camp was so short, and the turnaround from both the regular draft and the supplemental draft. I would have liked to have seen a bit more time for players to prep and sort of mesh together. People, of course, also came out and criticized that when the first United of Football episode happened, and there was the infamous incident with Devion Smith and the pizza, and Kirby. I want to say Kirby Smart. It's Kirby Wilson. I always say Kirby Smart because the Georgia coach. But anyway, there was a bit of criticism surrounding that, and people were saying, "Oh, but if you had more time to bond with your teammates, you wouldn't be in a situation like that." And I do agree, and I think I'm not going to pick one league over the other here, but the XFL, in my opinion, back in 2020, they had sort of a longer turnaround time. Their draft was in like October of 2019 or something like that, and the league didn't kick off till February 2020, so that was a few months. And I think they're going to do that again for the next edition in 2023. They're probably going to have a few months between the draft and the actual kickoff time, especially given now what we've seen in the USFL, where some guys might not be as prepared for others, and it's just kind of now we're all in Birmingham. What do we do? This league is happening. But no, overall, I mean, it's not terrible, but I do agree that it is definitely something worth pointing out. And there's these sort of little things that you see, like, again, the whole Maulers business, where it's like, maybe that could have been prevented if you had just spent a bit more time together.
Yeah, I did want to see that too, just while we're talking about the Pizzagate, because obviously, like, Outkick did another segment this week on this. Like, I really kind of thought we were done with the Pizzagate thing. I was really surprised that they brought back on Kirby Wilson again to, like, talk through this. The biggest takeaway to me, because a lot was made that he didn't, when he let Devion Smith go, didn't shake his hand, didn't get up to do any of that when he, dismissed him from the team. They bring him on. Kirby Wilson does a 5.5 minute explanation about why he let Devion Smith go. Never mentioned the man's name one time. Mm-hmm. Like, that to me, it says something, it says like that is it was not lost on me that you bring him back in. Like, we're specifically bringing back in Kirby Wilson. And he doesn't even bring up the guy's name. He's like, well, this player that doesn't even belong on our team anymore, we had to let him go. I'm like, I don't know. I just think that's a weird look. And I thought it was weird that they doubled down on that again. That Outkick was like, well, we need to bring Kirby Wilson back on now to, like, give his side of things.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think, it's almost, I don't want to say that they might be milking it for views at this point, just because obviously, that one clip alone of Devion Smith, I think got more views than the actual, like primetime viewership of the inaugural game.
Yeah.
So, at that point, like they kind of have to capitalize on that, but it's such a negative sort of sequence of events that you have to be careful with the way, you portray it. And I do think, I agree. Like at this point, like it's been 2 weeks now or whatever, like it's time to move on, like the teams are progressing, like, Devion Smith hopefully can get back in the league or go somewhere else at some point, because personally I do still want to see him play. I was very excited to see him play in the USFL, and I'm disappointed that he no longer has that opportunity, but I have no control over that. And at this point, I'm just kind of ready to move on as well.
So looking forward to week 3 here. We have a doubleheader Saturday, and then we have 2 games on Sunday. So Saturday at 1, I assume these are Eastern. We have the Bandits at the Gamblers. That game's going to be on Fox. Then Saturday at 5 o'clock, the big prime time is going to be Birmingham against New Orleans. Sunday at 11:30 on USA, we're going to have the Maulers taking on the Panthers. That's the fight of the 0-2 team, 0-2 teams. And then Sunday at 5 on Peacock, which could be a very, very scary rating, is the Generals versus the Stars. Which game are you looking forward to of that swath? I mean, I guess the Stallions Breakers, right? That's the game of the weekend.
Well, hear me out. I mean, yes, Stallions Breakers is definitely going to be like that. That has the potential to be the best USFL game yet. Like I feel like each week, the football is getting better, but this could really be a make or break, because the Breakers and the Stallions have been pretty consistent with their play. Breakers had a bit of a rough week 1 on offense, but it wasn't terrible. Of course, they improved a lot in week 2. Kyle Sloter looked like the guy that he had been marketed to be, but Bandits Gamblers is kind of my sort of dark horse for this week. I think that, the Bandits are looking to rebound, and, the Gamblers played extremely well last week, but came up just short. I thought they had a great performance, bunch of great players in that game. So it'll be interesting to see who comes out on top in that one, because I feel like that one is the hardest to predict for me. So definitely going to be tuning into that on Saturday.
Are the Stallions off Magoo? Are we on? It's Jamar Smith, right? Are we off? Did Magoo kind of lose that starting job?
Well, it's interesting because they've been, Magoo apparently, he got injured, I think, in that week 1 game. And since then, they've signed Montel Cozart, quarterback from Boise State, who I've seen work out in person at Hub Football. Great guy. He'll be the backup to Jamar, another Hub alum. I did an article on that. But, I think Magoo, it looks like at this point, he might be, I don't know if he's done for the season. There's been no injury update on him, which I kind of thought was interesting, because he hasn't been released either. It's just, he appeared in however many snaps for that week 1 game, and ever since then, it's just kind of been riding the Jamar Smith train, which I think is great, because Jamar Smith and Skip Holtz, have gone back for many years. They have that great connection together, and it's working out really well. But I feel like the Magoo thing is, it's very interesting. He's kind of just, gone away from the public circle. I could say the same about Kyle Lauletta too. The Maulers have been starting Josh Love, who was their second quarterback pick in the draft. And there hasn't been much word from Lauletta. He's maybe played 3 snaps or something on offense. And, there's been no real reason as to why they're starting Josh Love, from my knowledge. So, he hasn't been terrible, but I'd just be interested to know what was the decision behind that, because I truly thought that Lauletta was going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the USFL.
And then what do you make? We have the injury reports came out today. A lot of Stars players out, right? I think there was like 22 players on the, hopefully they're giving them the day off, right? They're not playing until Sunday, so that gives them that cushion there. But it's a really hard training camps here, or not training camp, really hard, season. We just don't have a lot of guys to move in and out. This is, I know Mike Mitchell talked a lot about this leading into the season, right? The 38-man roster, 7-man practice squad. It's just not a lot of room there when people starts getting hurt. I know Brian Scott was on the injury list today, and then I believe also Case Cookett, right? Cook is both Stars quarterbacks are theoretically didn't practice, right?
Yeah, and I think this sort of brings up an issue about, and I was talking to a few people about it. It's just the injured reserve. Where is the injured reserve list? Where can you store guys if they go down for a few games? Because right now, with the roster size being the way that it is, I feel like it's just, it's not right to just have a guy get injured and then cut him because he's going to miss, maybe not even the entire season. Maybe he's going to miss 3 or 4 games, but because there's no depth, you just have no room for him. I think that's flawed. And again, I'm not going to take a preference on leagues here, but, the XFL roster sizes were larger, and I'm pretty sure the XFL had an injured reserve too. So I would like to see the USFL maybe incorporate that in some form, or if at least, if they're going to cut the players or put them on like an injured list where, maybe they can't be activated or something like that. I don't know what the situation would be, but I'd at least like them to get some sort of compensation and recognition for their work, as opposed to them just being straight up released and we kind of act like nothing happened and move on to the next week, because that's, I think, very disrespectful to the player. And I also think it can be a bad look for the organization.
Well, yeah, and I mean, XFL had that Team 9, which again, see, these things cost money, right? So when you're looking at the USFL, it's how can we minimize expenses? Short training camp, short preseason. Even like RJ Young's doing all their media stuff. Like, okay, well, we're not having anyone else do anything or coordinating any of that stuff. Like, and part of that is the Team 9, and you don't have a backup squad there of guys that are game ready to go. You're drafting guys that are, staying in shape off on their own, but it's not the same as having, like you have Bart Andrus in the XFL having guys practicing ready to go to be able to come in, and if people get hurt, they already know the rules. They already know kind of the game set that way,
Of course.
So moving, anything else USFL? I want to get CFL stuff here before we got to get out of here.
Right. No, I think we've covered everything about the USFL. Like I said, just excited to see where it can go. And I stressed this, last time I was on the show when we were doing the supplemental draft stuff. I'd be really excited to see, the USFL championship game, because, the spring leagues have had trouble making it to that point. The XFL had COVID, AAF had financial problems. Of course, the spring league, had a championship, and they've had a few championships now. But that signifies they made it to the end of the season, and that's great. But the issue there is that doesn't have the same publicity, and, people label that as a developmental league or one way or another. So I feel like, reaching that sort of end of the season championship game milestone would be huge for the USFL. And I feel like I feel confident enough right now to where I can say that will happen.
Yeah, I think they're in for this season. They have so much invested. I don't know. They say they're committed. I mean, you just have to see how the ratings go. If Fox, there's a lot of money behind this. I've seen a lot made, right? Oh, well, NHL costs X amount of money, and I mean, Fox is putting blood, sweat, and tears into like producing all of this as well. This isn't just like we're paying, we're handing off or we're acquiring content. It's just a lot. Kevin was just on. Kevin says that, they're all in committed. I think I believe that when they say that, but it was very odd this week to have so many people come in and be like, don't worry about the ratings. Don't worry about the ratings, when I don't think, sometimes, say less or say, tell me more is telling whatever. Like, if this isn't an issue, why are there so many people telling me it's not an issue? That's where I kind of lay down on that. So last thing, so CFL, this was exciting. We're getting ready. The CFL draft is next week. I think Mark's going to be doing a live show for Newshub on that night. I had kind of debated doing a live CFL draft. I don't think that's in the cards. I think I have to work. They have their 9 rule changes. We had batted around a lot of stuff in the offseason. No 4 downs. I know 3 Down Nation is going to be upset. I know Dunk over there that there's no 4 downs in the CFL. We have the big changes are the hash marks moving. We're thinning the field, kind of the field of play that way. Not the physical field, but kind of limiting the hash marks that way, moving people in. Moving back the kickoff. They're incorporating some game day stuff where they're going to have someone be more like communicated between the coach and the officials, kind of getting ball spotted and timeouts, stuff like that. Like the 2 quarterback thing. Now you can have 2 quarterbacks on the field. Feels a little more like that's a gimmicky rule to have than anything that's going to be actually seen on the gameplay. Big takeaways, any of the rules that you saw that you felt the need to comment on?
Yeah, well, I mean, the 2 quarterbacks thing you brought up is really the one that stood out to me, not because I feel like it's going to be used often. I feel like that's going to be more of a package play sort of scenario where you maybe have that like once or twice a game at most. I mean, of course, that'll depend on, the offensive coordinator and the head coach too. But, I do think that that's interesting. That opens up a lot of possibilities. It reminded me a lot of Chris Streveler because he was more of a running quarterback than a passing quarterback. And he also, caught a few passes. So he was kind of doing everything. And I feel like, having a guy like that that's more versatile could draw interest to the league. Again, even though it's probably not going to be used that much, Streveler had a lot of success in that role, got him an NFL opportunity. So I feel like he's kind of the poster boy for this rule almost, because, he found success in the CFL as a quarterback with a not traditional quarterback role, if that makes sense. But no, I'm excited. I think all the rule changes are great. Of course, I'm glad they didn't move to 4 downs. I was quietly against that because I feel like 3 downs is what makes the game interesting. And, it definitely makes the game more fast paced. I feel like there was a bit of a lack of offensive production last year from teams across the league. But I do think next year that sort of fast paced offense will return in full force as long as they keep that 3 downs, which looks like it'll be official now.
Yeah, I'm glad we kind of moved off of that. We were still airing stuff last week, 3 down, talking about Bo Levi, advocating for 4 downs. I think the year off just killed it. I think the guys, it's the same with the USFL. These guys aren't in game shape every day of the year like you are in the NFL, and you're just not able to kind of turn that on. And I really do think having the year off just really killed that. I'm really excited because it really did kind of get to be a little bit of a slog, the CFL season by the end, just with some of the games that we're still kind of struggling through. I am excited for that. The interesting thing with the quarterback, I saw Farhan and Naylor were all very supportive of all these rule changes. I really didn't see anyone that was really upset or, no real outburst against any of these. The thing with the CFL though is, quarterback injuries, that happens so much. It's such a thin roster as well. Are we really sacrificing 2 quarterbacks for 1 play? God forbid if anything happens, are we really gonna, that to me was the one that I saw the feedback about, we're really gonna have Vernon Adams and Trevor Harris out there or whatever, God, someone gets hurt and then we're on our 3rd string quarterback and what's happening. So that to me just feels a little more gimmicky. I thought Danny Austin was funny, friend of the show. He tweeted out I definitely didn't know that wasn't allowed before. And I thought that was kind of funny because, I don't think if you really think about dressing 2 quarterbacks that way, obviously they have to keep the ratio rules in check. The hash marks, I think will be good. I mean, I think it's all just a little tweaky stuff. It feels fine. Nothing feels out of left field. Nothing feels game breaking. Any other talk about this? I thought about bringing someone on specifically, but I just didn't feel like there was a lot of game-breaking stuff that we needed to kind of break down about.
No, I mean, I think all the changes are just pretty minor, and I think all of them are meant to, continue to improve the game, especially after a lackluster year in 2021. And I do think all of those rules will successfully help it. I'm almost glad that they didn't do anything too drastic because it's last year's CFL was okay, but I feel like if you made a bunch of major changes this year, then you wouldn't have sort of that return to the way the CFL was before COVID, because that's what I really think 2022 is going to be. I feel like it's going to feel more original, more traditional, all these things that I didn't get to see last year when I started following the league more closely. And I'm really excited for that. So I'm glad that, they didn't do anything too over the top and, sort of make it like an arena type game or something like that. Nothing against arena football. Of course, I love that. But no, I ultimately, I think all the changes are, nothing really noteworthy, but sure. I mean, we could highlight it and I'll back them and say that it's good for the league.
Yeah, the other interesting thing, I thought the kickoff, they moved the kickoff back 5 yards. USFL had moved it back 10 yards, right, from the 35 to the 25, trying to give more distance for the returning team to be able to get some field position. I just thought that was interesting that both leagues, and not that one stole after the other, but that both sets of leagues in analyzing gameplay and stuff decided we need to start giving these guys more of a head start that way to put them in scoring opportunities. Also, the no yards penalty, right? CFL kind of has that halo rule in terms of being able to receive the ball. That's always going to be a 15-yard penalty now, where it used to only be a 5-yard penalty if the ball had bounced before the player retrieved it. So again, we're incentivizing, we're moving guys up, which I like. I mean, I also like to see a team go from the 5-yard line all the way to the end zone. So, right. To me, I think you lose a little bit of that. I don't love the XFL shootouts, anything like that when we're starting from the 10. I mean, I like seeing the field be traversed, but if the CFL feels the need to get these guys, closer to the 50-yard line, I guess have at it.
Yeah.
As my neighbor backs his loud car up here, I'm sure you can hear that here before we go. Any other notes, any other XFL, CFL, USFL stuff? I know you're kind of the catch-all today. Anything else before we let you go?
Oh, not really. I mean, I think we covered all that needed to be covered. Just excited for all these leagues to, continue. And I definitely think it'll be interesting if, we have the USFL now, the CFL comes summer, and then next year we have the XFL and USFL competing. I feel like this is really the return of true spring football that we've been wanting for a long time, because even, before COVID, like the AAF, I feel like was one of the first true pioneers since the UFL going back to like 2012 or whatever that really, put their foot in the ground and said, we want to have a league, that doesn't really, well, you can have the whole NFL competition debate another time, but just a league that people can watch during the NFL offseason is a way to put it. And I feel like now we're sort of being surrounded by all these leagues, and, some people don't like it because they only want one. Personally, I love it. I think, the more the better, because it gives more opportunities to more players who otherwise wouldn't have that. So, yeah, I'm all for it. Just excited to see where everything progresses. That's ultimately the main thing here.
Yeah, my last comment, I had someone leave a feedback on the YouTube today talking like, I really zone out with the CFL. We really have our XFL, our USFL now. I don't need the CFL. None of these compete. They all overlay. I mean, honestly, if you didn't even watch the first couple weeks of the CFL, if you stayed with the USFL through the championship and then switched over to the CFL mid-July, I mean, you're really just missing the first couple weeks of that. So I don't get that like divide, like you said, or that, well, I have one, I don't need the other. I mean, the CFL is rolling from June all the way through November, if you want to overlap that with NFL or not. But you could still watch the XFL next year or the USFL and then transition right into the CFL. So I thought that was an odd comment. Evan, I really appreciate it. If people have one, check out your work, anything else, all the news hubs, CFL, XFL, USFL news hub. We make sure we post on all of those now for Mark. But I really appreciate your time, Evan. Lots of insights today.
Yep. Thanks, Reed. Happy to talk football.
Well, we have Jake Ceresna here today with the Edmonton Elks. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I'm good. I appreciate this. We had Victor Cui on a couple weeks ago. We're accumulating lots of friends at the podcast now, James Wilder as well. How is your off season going?
It's been going good. We had a tough year last year, and at the end of that year, we had to play 3 games in 7 days because of COVID issues. So I think this off season for me has been more just about like healing my body and more just getting everything fine tuned and getting ready to go for this year.
Are you sensing a lot of excitement and optimism from the club kind of heading into the season?
Oh yeah, absolutely. With our new management in place and new head coach and Chris Jones, there's a lot of good buzz around the team right now, which is good going into the season. But at the end of the day, we got to execute. So that's the plan. We'll see how it goes.
What is Coach Jones like?
I actually haven't got to meet him yet. I just got back to Edmonton recently, so I haven't had a face-to-face interaction with him yet, so I'll have to get back to you on that.
But it seems like he is. I was reading interviews that he knows nothing but coaching. That he like his wife and family. That all he is the sole reason he's been put on this earth is to coach and win football games.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. I can't speak about him because I haven't met him, so you'd have to ask him or someone who knows him. But from the players that I've talked to that have played with him, I've heard nothing but good things, and in that. We're going to be competitive and we're going to win some football games. So I'm excited for that.
Talk about the decision to stick with Edmonton, to re-sign and be with them. And do you feel at home there? What is it about the team that you enjoy being there?
Yeah, I like Edmonton a lot. I think this is a great organization. I like the people in the building. So after I played for the New York Giants and I was coming back to the CFL, this was like the first destination that I had in mind. And I've had success here playing during my career, right? So I wanted to go back to somewhere that was familiar, somewhere that I was successful at before. And that's kind of why I chose to come back here.
What do you enjoy most about playing the CFL game specifically? There's been so much off-season and rules and everything, but what do you enjoy about it? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love the game. I've come to like the CFL game, the 3 downs. What I like, as a defensive lineman, is being able to pass rush a lot more because there's only 3 downs. So I like that aspect of the game, and just how quick it is, and how you're always in the game in the CFL game. Even if there's like 2 minutes left, a team could come back from 2 or 3 scores down just like that because of the 20-second play clock. So and only 3 downs. So it's a fun game to play.
Okay. So I was reading, this wonderful article on the Edmonton Elks website about your mother passing away. I'm so sorry to hear about that. I lost my father to cancer at a very young age as well. What has it been like prepping for the season? And then I want to make sure we talk about the event coming up in May as well. But obviously tumultuous time, everything going on.
Yeah. Thank you for your condolences. The off season's kind of just been healing for me. So physically healing from the end of last year, and kind of mentally and emotionally healing from dealing with that, my mother passing away. So that's kind of been the focus of my off season. And you never really get over it, but you learn to take a step forward. And kind of my mantra is to be the best version of myself, because of my mom, right? Because she worked so hard to give me a good life. And she did give me a good life. So I need to take advantage of that and kind of be the best version of myself in her memory. So we have that Elks Women's Dinner on May 5th. And we're raising money for ovarian cancer. So if you go on their webpage, you can find a link to help donate. And every dollar counts to trying to find a cure for this cause in all types of cancers.
Talk about your mom and being able to talk to her after the games, having someone like that to root you on. What was that like, and how are you going to carry on that, the memory and the, I guess, the respect of that kind of headed into the season?
Yeah, no one loves you like your mom, right? She loves you unconditionally no matter what you do in life. So my focus is to just carry on her memory with me, and to just play for her, and to just always be happy and live my life how she would want me to.
Certainly going to be a good chip on your shoulder to carry into the season. A good something on your heart to make sure. I know she's going to be proud and watching, and it's something. It's interesting when you lose a parent, and then you have success. And I know I talk with my mom about having my father pass away, and they'd be so proud. They're watching on it. You do feel like you're doing it kind of in their honor, and that hopefully that they can see that and be proud of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And that's kind of my focus.
I saw you were hanging out with James Wilder as well. You're going to be a part of his. I was researching you. A lot of good friends and friends of the podcast you're involved with. Talk about just working with the other guys, being involved in the other things you do. I think James is running the camp coming up that you're being a part of. Just building that social interaction with the team, right, and the other teammates.
Yeah, James is a great teammate. We got a lot of good guys in the locker room in Edmonton still, and he's got a camp coming up, I believe, May 7th, and I'm just helping him out with that. He asked me if I could help him out, and it was just not like a yes 100 times over. I love helping my teammates out and kind of getting that bond, and we got a lot of guys coming here to Edmonton early before the season starts. So we're trying to kind of build that chemistry and get things going before we drop the ball and start playing.
That's interesting. So is that abnormal? It's interesting to me that you say that there's a lot of Edmonton guys coming up to really kind of build those bonds ahead of the season.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a little abnormal. I'm not sure what other teams are doing, but I just know we got a lot of vets coming up early. Getting ready to go. I think a lot of people are excited about our season this year, and a lot of us have, a lot to prove this year, that were here last year for the bad season, and I think we want to turn around more than anybody else. So I think that's why a lot of us are coming up early, just to get ready to go.
That's the thing, we cover all these leagues and, we're talking USFL stuff and, you guys, especially, leaving your homes, going up, getting set up in Canada, ahead of time. It's so much passion and drive that goes into it. I just don't think that it's appreciated enough. People look at the CFL season in general, it's so long and arduous, right? It's grueling, but then all the extra time and being away from everybody. What is that like? Yeah,
it's tough, because a lot of guys that are Americans, they kind of spend 6 months up in Canada, 6 months back home. So, a lot of them leave their families that are back home and you're up here and all you have is your teammates. So it could be tough, living that lifestyle of going back and forth for a lot of guys. And I think it's just about, at the end of the day, a lot of us just love football and we love what we do and we're passionate about it. And that's why we're willing to make the sacrifice. And I think the CFL is a great league overall. So I think that's why a lot of guys are still here playing.
Something that was interesting, I was, researching you this morning ahead of time. You were actually drafted in the XFL to the DC Defenders back in 2020. You opted to go back to the CFL. I was reading on Wikipedia because of, player having what's the right word? The player agency, right? The player union. Yeah. Player union. And what's interesting to me about that is, we've talked a lot and we've had Kenneth Farrow on the show. He has the United Football Players Association. They're trying to work with the USFL and the XFL. With that coming back, it's interesting to me, what can the XFL do or what can the USFL do to incentivize players to not go back to the CFL? Because like you said, you do have the players union, more long-standing, right? You kind of have your stability there. So kind of walk me through that thought process because it was really interesting to me to read about that.
Yeah, it was more than just the players union. There's a few reasons, but, you do have a players union, so you do have kind of that stability and protection that comes with that. And then also just the compensation up in the CFL was higher for me and the certainty of there being a season, so I didn't want to go into a spring league that plays 2 or 3 games and then folds. It's kind of my thought process without any real protection. When those leagues folded, like those guys didn't get paid after that. Kind of with the AAF, kind of with the XFL back in 2020. I know COVID kind of hampered that process too with them. But yeah, that was kind of my reasoning, was just like the CFL was more stable just as a whole. And I was going to be getting paid more and I was more familiar with it going back. So that was kind of my process on doing it. I think what those leagues have to do is they just have to show that they can make money and that they're not going to fold in the future. And they could, put together, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, back to back to back of continuous play and increasing salaries. And I think a lot of guys would probably gravitate towards that.
Well, it's interesting because, we just had in the USFL here, when the season started and we had all these, the contract info came out and, it's comparable for, a CFL starting salary. I know a lot of you guys make more than, the starting, but, here we had the first week of the season, Devian Smith, get released, and you can say right or wrong. He had, I don't know if you heard on, the pizza and the chicken salad and all that. But, that's someone that maybe if you had the players union would have been protected a little bit more, right? Than like the league being like, you're released. Is that when you look at these leagues and them not having some sort of organized body for the players, is that something that you guys think about a lot more than maybe the casual fan puts in the thought process when analyzing these leagues?
Yeah, I mean, for me, definitely. I can't speak on too many other people, but the more years you kind of play professional football, the more you kind of understand how things work. I think when I was a rookie and I was just looking for an opportunity, right? So I just go wherever. And I think that's what the USFL and XFL again is. Again, a lot of guys, their first year out of the league to go and play there. But when you kind of are established and you played a few years, there's other things that you're looking for because now you're kind of older. A lot of guys might have families and stuff that they also have to provide for. So there's a lot of those questions that have to be answered when you look at playing in different leagues.
It's interesting. To round it back to the CFL before we go, goals, personal or team wise for the season. I mean, obviously everyone wants a Grey Cup, but I mean, what are you looking to accomplish this year, you personally?
Yeah, me personally, I'm just trying to start every game, have 10 plus sacks as an interior defensive lineman, and be an all-star this year, and just help my team contribute to a championship, hopefully. Those are kind of my goals on paper. And that's really it. And this is my contract year, so I'm just trying to prove my worth and sign another contract after this season.
And obviously remain, in Edmonton if God willing, is somewhere that you feel comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. God willing.
Well, Jake, I really appreciate you coming on. I want to make sure, people donate. I'll put the link on our YouTube if you want to donate to the Elks charity dinner coming up. Really appreciate it. Any player coming in the offseason to talk and kind of promote the CFL game. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It was fun. It was a blast.
I want to thank everybody so much for their time today, scheduling stuff, Matt, Carolyn, everyone with the BC Lions facilitating Amar's interview. 30 minutes with someone that's as important and powerful as Amar is certainly something I don't take for granted. Big ask for my part. I really appreciate everyone facilitating that. Want to thank Kevin Kugler coming on in between, prepping for his role in the USFL this weekend. Evan Willsmore for always spending lots of time kind of breaking down all the out football stuff. And then Jake Ceresna as well. Really appreciate Edmonton setting that up. That is it for me today. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. The draft is going on. We have USFL games, a couple on Saturday and Sunday, hoping that prime time USFL coverage, pushes the ratings back up for Fox, having both of those games over the air. And we'll see. I don't think it's too early to panic about USFL stuff, but like I said at the top of the show, when you have the president of football operations brother, tweeting, "Listen here, you XFL bloggers," it's weird. It's an interesting world we live in. It's a weird look. I don't know. I didn't want to dive too heavy into that in the show, but it is certainly something interesting to talk about. So we'll see how the ratings do if they normalize for the USFL. I don't think, like I said, it's too early to panic, but it's that local advertising. It's that local marketing we've been talking about the whole time, trying to get outside of the Fox Sports bubble, maybe work with some of the more niche podcasts, maybe do a little bit more grassroots marketing in that effect. I've kind of been championing that for a while now. So I really appreciate you all for stopping by. Like I said, like and subscribe if you appreciate any of this nonsense that we have going on. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.